people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
Is the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister meets with his ethics chief as pressure mounts for an inquiry into the Home Secretary's conduct.
A very good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock bright and early this Monday, 22nd of May. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn, Holmes and Isabel Webster.
And here are your headlines. Rishi Sunak will fly back to Britain today to decide the fate of Suella Braverman. Following allegations, she asked civil servants for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Union heads will lead a protest outside Westminster in opposition to a bill that would ban some workers from striking. The legislation returns to Parliament today, where it will be scrutinised by MPs.
The Labour leader will lay out his plan for modernising the NHS with a pledge to look beyond just funding to fix the fundamentals. He will also commit to meeting all major health service targets in his first term.
And Prince William will pay tribute to the survivors of the Manchester Arena bombing 6 years on. He'll be speaking at the launch of a report into mental health failings in the wake of the event.
And some news for you. That used to be GB Views at gbnews.uk, but it is now .com.
Ooh, we've gone global.
Makes all the difference, yes, mega worldwide. It means you can log on anywhere, and you can watch us on that as well, gbviews at gbnews.com. So you can register your views from anywhere around the world. It just makes it easier for our international audience, of which you're very welcome. And if you are part of it, use it today to get in touch and tell us where you are watching or listening from. And also the Twitter sphere still exists.
Yeah, at GB News, as it always was. As Eamonn says, we love to hear from you.
OK, here's the lead story on this Monday morning. The Prime Minister will meet with his ethics advisor as he flies back to Britain to decide the fate of the Home Secretary.
Rishi Sunak's facing calls to investigate Suella Braverman over allegations she asked civil servants to help her avoid getting speeding points on her licence.
Now, when asked about this story in Japan yesterday, Mr Sunak refused to publicly back the Home Secretary, saying he hadn't spoken to her and didn't know the full details.
Well, let's speak now to the former political director to Boris Johnson. That's Alex Crowley, now regular on the show. Good morning again to you, Alex. Let's start to be very clear about what exactly the allegations are. It's understood that when she was Attorney General, she got 3 points in her licence and was given the choice, as we all are, either go on a speeding course or pay the fine.
I wasn't given a choice. Have you been on a speeding course?
Well, it's not about me, Eamonn.
What? I've been on more than one.
It's not about me, Eamonn.
Anyway, I'm just curious, never having been on one.
When you look at the actual detail of this, she appeared to have wanted to avoid the embarrassment of having to sit in a speed awareness course with other members of the public.
Yeah, she wasn't the Home Secretary at that time.
No,
she was
Attorney General.
Some of the coverage of this has been a little bit unfair to her. She wasn't trying to avoid a fine, it appears. She wasn't trying to avoid getting the penalty points. She just didn't want to do the speed awareness course with other people. That's as much as we know, of course, because as ever, what we've seen with over the last few months, there have been a number of allegations made by anonymous people against ministers, and of course we don't often know the full details of it, which is why I suspect Sunak's called in his ethics advisor.
Would that be an offence in itself? I mean, the very fact that she would go to civil servants who are there to advise, and one can understand if you're in a public office like that, you may say, oh, I'd rather do this out of the gaze of the public eye. Is that an offence, or could that be construed as an offence in itself?
No, I think it's probably a little bit silly. She perhaps should have known that asking a civil servant to look into something like that would put them in a very difficult position. And as ever with all of these things in politics, it's not the thing that you've done, it's the attempt to cover it up. She should have just, if this is true, and I caveat that, if this is true, she should have just taken it on the chin and said, yep, I was caught speeding, and yes, I'm doing the course just like everyone else has.
Look, it seems to me sensible to get the ethics advisor, Laurie Magnus, to look into this, because it becomes so political, doesn't it? Labour and the Lib Dems are raging about it, the Prime Minister saying he doesn't know. Let's just find out the facts and let him decide.
Exactly.
But, there are questions. Do Cabinet Ministers get special treatment? Is she entitled to something that the rest of us aren't? Well, they do get special treatment. They're driven around in convoys. They are they get to speed through places and on aircraft that none of us get to go on. So this idea that, they shouldn't be treated differently, well, they are treated differently. So I think we need somebody who understands that from the inside.
You think a perk of the job?
Yeah, I mean, you could understand why, say, the Prime Minister or whatever wouldn't want to go and sit in a room in Chertsey for 3 hours with a group of the public when he's trying to run the country, for example.
Yeah, but I suspect the Prime Minister wouldn't be so silly as to try and avoid it in the first place. Looking at the broader issues here, this is very curious timing. This incident allegedly happened last year when she was Attorney General. It's only just coming out now. Very interesting, given that only just last week she was making speeches that were perhaps unhelpful to the government.
Interesting.
Alex, so translate this for us. So she becomes problematic to the government last week, and you reckon this could be her being slapped down this week?
Put it this way, I'm not sure Number 10 will be wholly displeased that this has come up now.
Okay.
Interesting. OK, let's talk about something else that's happening today. We've got the strike bill returning to the Commons. What can we expect from that?
Look, I think that the same old row is going to come up again. Again, it's quite useful for the government to have this row because it puts Labour very firmly on the wrong side of public opinion on this, frankly. We've had wave after wave of strikes. And yes, there have been individual strikes that the public have supported, but actually I think Rishi Sunak has taken a very reasonable position on minimum service levels, which of course exist in many other European countries, including France, which isn't, which has something of a record when it comes to strikes. And of course we must remember that this is the government delivering a manifesto promise.
Okay. Alex, we'll leave it there. We'll hear from you again after 7 o'clock, Alex, because if there's anything you want to say as to Alex's analysis of things, you are very welcome on our new... what is it? Is it an email address? No, but is that an email address?
That's
is that a website?
An email address, yeah, but our website's already gone global.
GBviews at gbnews.com. That makes a difference.
Now, we're going to turn our attention to a sad milestone now, the 6th-year anniversary of the Manchester Arena bombing.
OK, in 2017, 22 people killed, hundreds injured after that bomb was detonated at the end of an Ariana Grande concert.
The attack prompted the government to draft legislation known as the Protect Duty, a bill promising measures to protect against potential terrorist attacks in public places.
And let's go to Chris Phillips. Chris is former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office. Thanks for joining us, Chris, on this anniversary morning. It's been a year since that bombing, as we say, 6 years since that bombing. What do you think we have learned, if anything?
Well, 6 years, amazing, time flies so quickly. But really, the most amazing thing actually is the depth and the breadth of the investigation and inquiry that went into this attack in Manchester, and of course causing the deaths of all those 22 people. And that inquiry basically really showed up everything from the security to the policing to the event itself not working properly from a security basis. And this was at a time when there was a wave of terrorist attacks coming across Europe. So there were no excuses. And what I think the government intends to do is try to do something about that.
Now, different venues and their responsibilities under this Protect Duty protocol. So if you run a shop, if you run a nightclub, if you run a sports ground, a library, a hotel, an airport, a bus station, I could go on and on. What has changed there, Chris?
Well, at the moment, Eamonn, nothing has changed. The Protect Duty is only legislation that's going towards Parliament. Yeah, I mean, one of the big things is the amount of time it's taken to actually get this thing to law. And it wouldn't have got this far, let's face it, without the actions of some members of the public, effectively, including one of the mums of one of the murdered children. So what it will do is actually put some emphasis on the events, the people that are running the event, to take counter-terrorism seriously. I mean, we know that that terrorists want to attack crowds and crowded places, and what this act does is make those big, particularly the big sites, do much more to protect themselves, to have an evaluation of what they need to do and what the threat is, and actually put in place some measures that will protect people.
What about the lessons to be learned in terms of the response to the emergency services? Because there were delays, weren't there, in tending to people and the way it was handled in the immediate aftermath. I mean, are we in a better position if this was to happen today, for example?
Well, I mean, it was atrocious, let's be quite honest. The way the emergency services acted, in fact, they weren't even there when they should have been there. So no one came out well out of the Manchester Arena attack, and everyone had lessons to learn. I think the key thing here is that the lessons should have been learned whether or not there's a legislation in place or not. Police officers should have been doing their job. The fire and ambulance should have done a better job as well. So everyone needs to learn lessons, and this is all about making sure and putting the emphasis on the organisations that are supposed to be protecting us at these events to do something about it. And I think it sensibly does show a different level of scale to the smaller properties, so the pubs, as you mentioned, Eamonn, and also those bigger events with 800 people plus. There's a great deal more responsibility on those events.
Chris, good to hear from you. Thanks very much indeed for your interpretation and your analysis on things 6 years on the Manchester Arena bombing. Chris Phillips is a former head of National Counter-Terrorism Security.
Now, Volodymyr Zelensky has insisted that Bakhmut is not occupied after Russia claimed it has taken control of the area.
Speaking in Japan, he said Ukrainian troops remained in the city and likened its destruction to that of the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima.
Well, let's get more on all of this now from the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. Good to see you as always, Robert. Look, it's hard to establish the truth in all of this. I mean, Zelensky absolutely adamant that it hasn't fallen, but if it has, how significant is it as a loss for the Ukrainians?
Well, psychologically, obviously, it is advantage, not necessarily to Russia, but particularly to Mr. Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin of the Wagner mercenary group. They showed pictures of them being somewhere in and around the center of Bakhmut, what remains of it, yesterday, and that appears to be so. Just to bring you up to date, that the ground force commander, General Syrskyi, has said, yes, but outside, Ukrainian forces are now attempting to surround Bakhmut in a looping, enveloping movement, as it were. This is the kind of setback that, in terms of the information war, Ukraine didn't want. But it's very interesting that I think that a lot of its allies and supporters in the West have already discounted. But it also modifies all the talk about there's going to be a big summer offensive. So there's going to be a big summer grinding on of this terrible war.
You highlight something very interesting there, Robert, about the internal strife within the Russian forces. So you've got this freelance group, the Wagner group, and you've basically got them maybe prematurely saying we've got control of Bakhmut, but this is really to send a message to the Kremlin, really, to say we've sustained huge casualties, we've grafted this out for you, we're getting the credit for this, so don't be thinking of taking it.
Yes, but it's very interesting where the Wagner Group is going next. It likes to go to places where it can make money, and it's connected to another big story in the news at the moment. The Wagner Group has started popping up or in and around Sudan, and we know that they have been in West Africa, getting involved in gold mines and so on. How does this relate to Bakhmut? Well, part of the Wagner story is, well, we've done our bit, Russia must take over, and we'd like to pull back because Prigozhin wants to send his forces elsewhere, namely to Africa. You're absolutely right, but there's been a big question in the news as to whether Prigozhin himself could make a power bid. That appears to be off for the moment, but there does appear to be a tremendous sorting out on the Russian side. And as that goes on, watch what the Ukrainians will do. They will try to exploit the cracks. They will try and find an opening. That's where they will move in, both physically and psychologically and politically. And that's what the summer offensive is going to be about.
I just find this Wagner thing fascinating, Robert. So basically, Wagner is an army for hire, and they've decided they could make easier money in Sudan with less casualties, probably, better business for them in Sudan. What size is Wagner? What are their capabilities?
It's very elastic. Their capabilities were not much up till about 4 or 5 years ago, but then they became very present in parts of Africa, particularly in Libya, for example. I don't want to confuse things. They've been involved in Mali. I think it's in the tens of thousands, but not all of those are soldiers. They are in the business, despite the obvious grandstanding by Prigozhin himself, formerly very close to Vladimir Putin. They're in the business for booty. They're in the business for profit. It is what it says on the label, a private military company, a PMC. They're not going to take over the state. They've been extremely valuable because this is what's happening now on the Russian side. Almost to avoid a general mobilization, you're getting all these militias, including companies like the famous Gazprom gas supplier, making their own military companies. It's a very, very difficult and strange way, in modern terms, to run a war.
Speaking about the losses, going back to the situation in Ukraine, I mean, it's thought that there have been heavy losses in the region of thousands on both sides in the battle for Bakhmut. And the fear is that they could go for Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, where there's a rail station next. And we've got breaking news this morning that the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant has switched to standby and emergency power supply generators. So the situation incredibly grave still in Ukraine. How useful, then, will this trip have been for President Zelensky to the G7 and that promise of those F-16 fighter jets?
Enormously important. We keep on hearing that, yes, there are more packages coming on, whether from Germany or from America, of ammunition and supplies. The trouble is that the Western powers supporting Ukraine at the moment are not producing ammunition at nearly the rate at which it is being consumed. I mean, it's almost at an insane rate. 90,000 shells a month at one time the Ukrainian forces were using. They are extremely vulnerable, Isabel, because they're vulnerable for the reasons you have stated, which is human power. How long can you go on taking the losses like this? The Russian losses have been enormous, but proportionately, I would think that the Ukrainians have been almost as bad. By that, I mean the rate of loss to the population available. It is very dicey. Answer your questions. F-16s, it's the workable workhorse plane, can launch missiles, can cover very closely, intimately, as it's put, ground attacks, and are necessary for that. They're absolutely vital. Can they get there in time? That's the big question.
Military analysis there from the defence editor of the Evening Standard, Robert Fox. We appreciate it. Thank you, Robert. The time, 18 minutes past 6.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. The Labour leader will pledge to cut suicide rates within 5 years if his party wins at the next general election. Speaking later today, Sir Keir Starmer will describe it as the biggest killer of young lives in the country. He'll also outline plans to modernise the NHS and to meet waiting list targets.
The Trade Secretary will travel to Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates this week in a bid to agree new trade deals ahead of the 5-day trip. Kemi Badenoch says she wants to strengthen the UK's strong trade and investment relationships with Gulf nations.
The average wedding guest is set to spend more than £1,000 this year, according to American Express. Cash, couples' experiences and kitchen appliances are among the popular gifts guests are planning to make this year. Expensive business getting married for all involved.
Yeah.
The couple, the parents and the guests.
I see the surveys by American Express. Well, they'll not be paying by American Express. How many times do you go in? Do you have an American Express?
I do, yeah.
And how many times do you go into an establishment and they say, no, sorry, we don't take it? Don't they?
Yeah, quite often, yeah.
So you better make your rates more competitive.
Well, I always think it's the outfits that are the killer. And the accommodation. And our producer this morning was talking about how expensive it is as a singleton to go to all these weddings and have to pay the same rate as couples. Obviously, you split that cost if there's two of you. But, no one wears the same outfit twice, so you're splashing out on an outfit that you're only going to wear once, which is why, by the way, we should all be hiring outfits for these things. Childcare, apparently, is huge expense as well, the accommodation. And then the gifts. £207.90 on average per couple.
Well, I was invited to a wedding on Saturday, but I simply couldn't go to the access for me would have been too much, too far, and it was away from home when I had to stay overnight and whatever it is. It would have been lovely, it would have been very, very nice, but it was all a bit too much, as you say, the whole shebang.
Yeah, the outfit, the company, the gifts, the accommodation, the transport, you name it, but it's worth it. I miss weddings.
But apparently it's worth it for a lot of singletons. Apparently a lot of people meet their partner.
I met my husband at a wedding.
Partner. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was he with anybody that day?
No, he was flying solo.
You didn't steal him
I
from
didn't
anyone?
steal him. He might have stolen me, but that's another story.
Desperate. Oh, right, okay.
But it's good for the economy. I mean, we complain about how much this costs, but it's, it's keeping the business world
Keeps
alive.
the world going round. It does indeed.
Circular economy.
Now, we're going to look very shortly at the future of shopping as retailers move to bring robots and AI into the shop place. And there's one thing you won't need: cash. Nobody wants it. Nobody seems to want it. But anyway, shops. What's the future? Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Still to come on today's programme on this Monday morning.
Just after 7, we'll be speaking to the Labour Party about their plans to modernise the NHS as Sir Keir Starmer vows to hit all health service targets in his first term if elected as Prime Minister.
Good luck with that, mate. 7:20, we'll ask if it's right to ban some workers from striking as unions protest the minimum service level bill returning to Parliament. Now, well, my view is it's your right to strike.
Yeah, let us know your view.
I think there's some appalling employers and they would get away with anything. I know we always hear the hard luck stories and we hear, oh, it shouldn't be right that ambulances strike and all that sort of thing, and that may well be, and that's part of the debate that we want you to enter in here today. But, you know, 0 contract hours, working people into the ground, no rights associated with their employment. GB Views at gbnews.com.
Big shake-up in the world of shopping.
Yeah,
I'm not
shops.
sure I'm OK with. Let us know what you think.
These are shops of the future.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not exactly sure how this works, but when I go out, well, not that I do it too often now, but dressing rooms, changing clothes, I always detested it.
Oh, yeah.
Do you like taking off your clothes in shops, do you?
No, because it's just a pain. You get hot and bothered, especially in winter when you've got a big coat, and then you go into the next shop and you have to do it all over again, especially if you've got kids around your ankles.
So they're going to replace all that with virtual dressing rooms.
OK, sounds good.
And AI-assisted shopping.
What does that mean, a robot? Well, then they can see you in your knickers and it doesn't matter. So that's got its perks. Okay. Anyway, could this all become the norm within the next 20 years? New data suggests that it might.
Well, the vast majority of young people favour this, but then they have no standards, have they? And they expect, well, it's true. Young people are in favour of everything. Change this, change that, change this. No standards.
You were young once, Eamonn.
But I still wanted my standards. Still expect... You know what's sadly missing everywhere? Service. A level of service. You know, we really care about your call. That's why we're keeping you waiting for 15 minutes on the end of this phone. What a lot of nonsense. Kate Hardcastle, she's our mystic Meg of all of this today. She's got her crystal ball out, looking into the shops of the future. How do you see it, Kate?
Well, to start with, can I just thank you, Eamonn, for championing better customer service, which I think we all agree needs to be improved. But there is a really interesting story here in what retail is going to look like. I'm absolutely pleased to tell you this new survey from Klarna has explained that even young people, 69% of them think that by the year 2041, they will still favour a proper physical store rather than virtual. So our high streets still have a future. That's good news, surely. But how those stores operate and how we get in those stores, I think the great thing that's going to come out of this is a lot of the jobs we were doing, stock checking, size checking, trying on, are going to be more automated, leaving hopefully more time for people as servers, which is what we want, right?
So we're going to have robots going to get a different size in the same pair of trousers, or helping you with the bra fitting or something. I mean, how does this work in reality, AI-assisted shopping?
Well, we're right at the heart of transformation, and some of the things we're seeing right now are not going to be the full versions in store. I don't think it's going to be a case of R2-D2 comes into your fitting room with a choice of trousers, Isabel. But I do think using technology to try and personalise the shopping experience is going to be everything. It might mean that before we even go into a store, our preferences are already known to the team there. It might be, I don't think we're going to see as much as this, by the way, with the VR headset. I think it's going to be much more natural and real. But it might be that those mirrors give us some recommendations because they'll have computer technology in it, and they'll be looking at us trying on the clothes and making recommendations to size fit. What it hopefully should mean as well is we get less items that where a size 12 is actually a size 14 elsewhere and a size 8 somewhere else. There should be more cohesion between the sizes we try on. So I think the intelligence working behind the scenes is going to make more sense.
But hang on a minute, a mirror that is looking at you whilst you're trying things on and then perhaps coming up with... I mean, that just sounds fraught with abuse.
Well, I tell you what is abusive. I mean, I agree with Kate that, you know, why is XL there and yet it's only large there and it's medium there? You need that consistency, and if you had something that actually was able to scientifically measure you and say that's the size that suits you, because we don't know. I mean...
Yeah, but there's psychology involved in all of that, isn't there, Kate? I mean, you go into some of the high-end high street shops and they make you think you're much smaller than you are because they're trying to sell you something.
Right?
Yes, because if you go in there and you realise how, you know, enormous a dress size you are, you probably feel rubbish. But they go, oh, you're a slinky size 6, and oh, I'll buy it then, I feel fabulous. When actually it's just a lie.
They were not saying that to you.
No.
You're a slinky size 6.
No.
I mean,
of course
seriously.
not. All right,
I'm just saying. But Kate, you see, is there not... Does all of this... Why do this in a shop? Why need this in a store? Surely everything you have described in terms of AI... you could just do sitting at home at the other end of a computer or screen.
You're quite right, Eamonn. So people still want stores in the future because they want personalised service. They want to be able to browse. And sometimes we just don't know what we're looking for. So what we're looking is a feature at the moment called unified commerce. To you and me, that basically means instead of just shopping on your phone and it feel like one experience, then you go into store and it feels like a completely different one. There'll be much more cohesion. Now, Isabel's quite right. We need to think about things, GDPR, our protection of our rights, protection of our identity. That's obviously going to be configured as part of this. But what Isabel talked about, which is the psychology of shopping, perhaps using emotion to trigger things, consumers just don't want it. They want authenticity, they want transparency, and they're saying, look, hey, put this tech to good use. Make my shopping experience better, quicker and smarter, and I'll keep on shopping in stores. So you might browse in a store and buy at home. You might browse at home and then have a look in a real store. But what's really smart is we're actually going to start using that technology for good purpose, actually solving the problems. And that fills me with joy. So don't get too worried about the spying bit, Isabel. It's all good. And Eamonn, I think you're actually going to start getting some of the customer service you want.
Just lastly, Kate, because I've seen pictures of you on social media hanging out with the robot. What have you been up to and getting involved with all of this tech? What were you doing?
So I'm in Dubai at the moment. I'm just going to shift over here. You can probably see the skyline behind me. And we're just about to headline a big conference talking about exactly this. What's going to happen with the future of retail and how does this technology fit into it? So it's all about artificial intelligence. And actually the robot I was doing the meet and greet with probably isn't going to be part of it. But it was pretty cute.
It was quite fun.
I'm just noticing in this report an interesting thing. Isabel was talking about what people spend on wedding outfits and whatever, and it was saying here that in 20 years more consumers will expect to engage in what's called a circular economy, so that it means that stores in the future will offer a buyback program closely followed by rental options. So that means what we shop, how we shop, what we buy will change.
The one thing I know about your viewers is they like to make sure their purchases make sense and get good value. And actually, this circular economy, it's not new news. It's just the idea that we buy things and use things better. So the idea that we rent an outfit for a wedding rather than just buy it because we only perhaps need it that one time, or the fact that we resell. There is no bigger, faster, more exciting growing economy in retail at the moment than the idea of re-commerce, which to you and me is selling you goods second hand. And it's something we're really excited about because it's got a sustainable benefit too. But it's about being smart with cash at the end of the day. It doesn't mean you have to be some kind of eco-warrior. It just means that you're making the most of what you're buying and getting the best value for your money. Win-win.
Woman Kate, thank you. Appreciate that. Have yourself a good day. Thanks for your time this morning. Thank you.
Right, stay with us. We're going to go through the papers. Lots of focus on the Home Secretary, and we'll be going through them today with Dawn Neeson and Fraser Myers up next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Dubes & Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is two new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
25 to 7. Hello there, very good morning to you. Front pages on this Monday morning stack up like this.
Is the Telegraph leading with claims by allies of Suella Braverman that she's the victim of a smear campaign amid the speeding fine row.
Times reports on patients being encouraged to use an NHS app to book private healthcare in an attempt to cut waiting lists. What's wrong with that?
The Mail reveals that drug driving's become more prevalent than drink driving, according to a new shock police report.
And finally, the Star says it's baked Britain.
Woo.
Temperatures across the country could reach 24 degrees this week.
I'm so here for that. I'm so excited about the final arrival of summer.
Suella Braverman. Kevin says she was offered a speed awareness course and was probably just asking someone about the chances of getting a one-to-one course. This is just another civil service stitch-up, you think, with her?
Peter says, I don't believe anything the civil service says. They are now determined to get Suella. I'd rather have her as PM than Rishi Sunak or Keir Starmer.
Denise says she's a high-profile, busy person and security needs have to be considered as well. I'm sure an online course these days is just as effective and efficient. So you see there that there seems to be a lot of sympathy for someone in her position asking for what we believe she asked for. So maybe this is all just a storm in a teacup. Let's find out now. We've got to go through the papers. Dawn Neeson. Morning, Dawn.
Good morning.
And Fraser Myers. Dawn, you're going to start with this Braverman story, Telegraph.
Absolutely. Pretty much in every single paper, but the Telegraph have gone big on it, and their angle is that Braverman smear fears over curbs on migrants. Now, you have to say the timing of this driving story is very, what's the word, coincidental, isn't it? The fact that after last week's, her big speech on migration and how she's determined to curb it again, and, British are forgetting how to do hard work, etc., etc. So then this comes out within days of that. So,
but seriously, is that a suggestion then that someone in Rishi Sunak's team have leaked this, or because there's no way he wants this story out?
I wouldn't have said that he did, but she did infamously. Suella Braverman did infamously describe the activist blob of left-wing lawyers, civil servants, and the Labour Party. I'm thinking more maybe from the civil service that this is coming from. But Team Suella are saying this is a smear campaign, nothing more than that. And I think the original story was indeed, as you described it, a storm in a teacup. I think it's like what she tried to do. I think you made the point earlier, Isabel, that they're not treated like the rest of us. Of course, they're not treated like the rest of us. So you don't expect her to go and sit in a Novotel room and have this speed awareness course. Are you punching the table, or you want to punch me?
No.
Catching flies.
Look at all these little flies.
So I think, I mean, instantly David Baddiel, who's no fan of the Tory party as well, tweeted that he was on a speed awareness course and he went and did it and, was sitting in the back of the class trying to keep his head down, etc., etc. And the comedian, very well known, obviously. And at the end of the class, the person taking it said, right, does anyone have any questions? And someone stuck their hand up and said, oh, yeah, can I tell my mates I was in a speed awareness course with David Baddiel? So can you imagine if Suella Braverman had been sitting in that room, everyone else would, probably half of them would want to kill her, and the other half
when she was Attorney General, she wasn't necessarily as well known as she is now. Do you think people knew who she was as well last summer?
No, I think somebody would. I mean, she's always been quite a divisive figure that most people are aware of in politics, isn't she? But, I mean, this is sort of like basically saying that this is a smear campaign and, it's, the whole...
Have you ever done a speed awareness course?
I haven't driven a car for, 21 years now, so no, I haven't.
Fraser?
I've never been caught speeding.
Right.
Oh, very carefully answered.
Let's take a look, Fraser, at how the Times is covering. This was, of course, a Sunday Times scoop. Yeah. And interesting that, obviously, Labour and the Lib Dems are trying to capitalise on this as much as possible. But as far as I can tell, either she's broken the ministerial code or not. It's surely just that simple. So you need to get the independent ethics advisor to look into it to make that decision. So it's not politicised.
Well, this seems to be the solution to all kind of political problems. Get some ethics advisor to decide. Is this really an ethical question? I'm not so sure.
The questions that are being asked are, do ministers get special treatment? Yeah. Are they above the law? She was Attorney General. Should she not have been totally flawless in her, conduct? I
understand. She should have had the wisdom to know not to ask advice about that, not to, especially to civil servants who she should really know are not her biggest fans, and that this could lead to problems down the line. I think that's a political misjudgment. But is it, in the end, let's remind ourselves, she did pay the fine. She didn't get any special treatment. She didn't do the private one-on-one speed awareness course that she wanted.
So if you were the Prime Minister, would you bother with consulting the ethics minister on this, or just
I think, well, if you're Rishi Sunak, it's a good way to not have to make a decision yourself. But he should really, I would probably back her if I were him.
Well, do you think that the fact that he's not backing her and that is kicking the responsibility to his ethics advisor actually indicative of what Dawn was saying, that she obviously spoke out of line last week, and this is a little bit of a...
Yeah, she's starting to cause problems for the government. She's attacking government policy. It's well known that she is very much at odds with the government's own kind of migration policy. She's much more worried about what we suspect might be 700,000 people net coming here. She wants to get that down. Rishi Sunak's more relaxed about it. So there's all kinds of reasons why Sunak might be going cold on her. But I think there is a sort of danger here, especially if we do think that this is the civil service, because we've seen what's happened to Dominic Raab, where actually another storm in a teacup, really, accused of hurting people's feelings, never actually swearing or anything like that, but it was often, the sense that the report into his bullying actually didn't have many smoking guns, and yet he was sacked anyway. So that kind of gave a green light to officials to say that.
Do you know what?
You don't
too
like
many
someone,
people moan about too many things and they're listened to. That's part of the problem. We see the reaction coming in from you guys at home today is saying basically, move on. There's more important things in life. There we go. Now, front page of the Express. Europe turns blind eye to let migrants reach UK. Scandalous, if true.
This is a series of investigations the Daily Express are doing all this week into the migration situation, which obviously is very important. The official legal migration figures due to be released this week, 700,000 to potentially 1 million net migration, and that's the legal ones. The illegal ones we don't know about. Now, the Daily Express have done today an interview with a people smuggler called Ari, who basically claims that Europe is getting rid of migrants. He says France and Europe in general could do much, much more to stop the boat crossings, which are killing people at the end of the day, but they just don't want to, because it gets rid of the problem that they're facing themselves. And let's face it, this is a problem that all countries in Europe are facing up to. I mean, Italy declared a state of emergency over the migrants heading to Italy and through Italy. And this smuggler is saying that he charges migrants £8,000 to £9,500 to be smuggled literally into France to get to the UK. And it's 45,000 last year that we know about. But this people smuggler, who's an Iraqi Kurd, is saying that by his estimation, at least 6 to 7 boats a night are crossing that channel. And the French, exactly.
6 to 7 or 67?
6 to 7
right.
a night, but they're the fully loaded dinghies, Eamonn, and that's every night. And he goes, the situation is going to get horrific as the summer months and the weather gets on. And he explains that the migrants don't want to stay in Italy and Germany, in the countries they literally have to bypass, because the black market, the black jobs market in the UK is so much more better for them to work in. So it's nothing to do with they've got family here or they speak the language. It's just the black market jobs.
That 6 to 7 or 67 that I was highlighting there is very, very important to you. Once I went to Scotland to a place called the Kyle of Lochalsh, which is a port opposite the Isle of Skye. There's now a bridge between the Kyle and the Isle of Skye so you can drive over, but in those days it was a ferry. And I said to the guy, I'd driven a long way and I put my seat back. I said to him, how long will this take? And he said, 45 minutes. And I said, oh, that's good. That's enough time for a doze. So I put my seat back. And within minutes, I was getting honk, honk, beep, beep, bang, bang. I said, I thought you said this was 45 minutes. He said, I said 45 minutes. So
very
there
good.
you are.
Very good.
That is the bridge.
This is definitely 6 to 7.
Okay.
According to him.
Let's talk about the NHS, Fraser. Look, I think it's the third of 5 big speeches from Keir Starmer today, setting out his vision for the country, this time focusing on the NHS and big, bold claims. But this is actually a splash based on what the Tories are planning to do, which is to use the existing NHS app to enable people to go and use the private health sector for things like diagnostics for cancer and the like. Tell us more.
So the idea is kind of opening up patient choice. I mean, obviously everyone knows that there is a massive waiting list, more than 7 million people, and apparently it's set to rise incredibly, despite all the kind of political attention that has been put on it recently. At the moment, the NHS does about the private sector does about 140,000 NHS operations a month. So hopefully that will rise, and it's important to take up this extra capacity because people need it, but there is a lot of suggestions that it's nowhere near enough to make up for it. And a lot of people, choice is a good thing, but for, I think, the vast majority of patients, they actually just want to go to their local hospital and don't want to be shopping around and don't want to, you do want someone like your GP or someone like that to actually just say, this is your course, this is what's going to happen. We've sorted it out for you. I think that's what most people
You can imagine being in central London and there'd be a bit of capacity in somewhere remote where there's less demand, and then you're having to travel miles, and that creates a two-tier system, doesn't it? And who's got the ability to miss work, or pay the transport or whatever else?
And you could possibly go, be asked to go all the way across the country. I mean, if that suits you, if you can skip a few months on the waiting list, but it's not going to be for everyone.
The thing is, with the NHS using private hospitals and private healthcare to treat patients, the NHS is still paying for that. It's not free. I mean, we're not paying for it, the NHS is paying for it, so it's a vast amount of money.
I was in Blackpool one year, and I checked into the Hilton Hotel in Blackpool, and there were lots of people from Northern Ireland queuing up, saying, Eamonn, how are you? What are you doing here? Whatever. And I turned to them, I said, what are you doing here? And they said, oh, we're here. The hospital has sent us over. What? The hospital in Belfast flew them over and put them up in the Hilton Hotel in Blackpool to have their procedures carried out in Blackpool on the NHS.
And that was including paying for their transport and everything?
Yes, yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
It was like a holiday, they said. They were going to be there for a week.
Well, doesn't this raise more awareness of how much wastage there actually is in the NHS?
You see the waiting lists, Fraser. What's the point of having waiting lists? When we're at the 7 million, they're never going to be reduced. Why don't we just rip them up and start again?
I think that would cause people a lot of stress, but I see what you're getting at. It's interesting. So Keir Starmer was talking about the Labour government is going to meet all the NHS targets.
No, they're not.
These they're not. Of course they're not. But the targets have been missed since 2018. So, we talk a lot about how the strain COVID, the pandemic, the lockdown has put on the system, and that's all true. But even prior to that, the NHS was failing to deliver.
Does Keir Starmer actually explain how he's going to do it?
Not really.
No,
I mean, he doesn't need to.
Something to do with non-doms.
Yeah.
Keir Starmer's very light on commitments, and any commitments he does make, he sort of reverses within a few months. So,
Yeah. Terrible situation, though. Absolutely. What our NHS has turned into, and I think a lot of it's got to do as well when you see the strikes that are going on. A lot of them will say it's not just about money, it's about background, conditions, organisation, administration, whatever. But Keir Starmer says he'll sort it out. What do you think? So when it comes to being stopped driving your car or whatever, you're more likely to be done for drugs in your system than drink in your system.
This is the splash on the Daily Mail today, and obviously we're all talking about driving fines at the moment with Suella Braverman, but this is a shocking story. Shock report reveals that danger on the roads as 80 drug drivers are caught behind the wheel. Now, this is a report from the National Police Chiefs Council, and there was a study last year, and that's where the statistics are from, the 80 a day. The problem with this is, so more and more people are now drug driving than drink driving. But they're escaping justice because the processing of the blood samples takes so long to do because, as we've discussed, the NHS system is failing. So they don't get the blood samples tested for 4 to 5 months, but the police have only got 6 months to prosecute the drug drivers. So most of them are just getting away with it. And this is, the fines for drug driving are exactly the same as drink driving. But it's just like people are doing it, but they're not. And the Mail have got horrific examples here of families that have lost loved ones to drug driving. It's just a horrific statistic again, isn't it?
But what makes anyone think that a drug in the system is any different than drink in the system? They might say, "Oh, I've had a drink, I'll not drive," but I've taken horse drugs or what is it called? Ketamine or whatever it is.
What are the implications on reactions? Because you know that drinking obviously makes you much more slow to react. But what if you took something like an amphetamine or MDMA that sort of speeds up your heart?
It does.
Does that actually affect your reactions as well?
Yes, it does.
Right.
I mean, it affects every part of you, doesn't it? So, and it depends obviously on what drugs we're talking about as to the effect it's going to have. If you're taking a speed-like drug, that's going to make your reaction sort of probably over-reactive. And if you're taking something like cannabis or something like that, it's going to slow you down. But this also covers our legal drugs, and there are limits to how many legal drugs you can have in your system before you are driving illegally. Whereas if it's an illegal drug, like the ones we've just discussed, then that is straightforward. You can't have any in the system because obviously it's illegal.
Fraser, we've been talking about weddings this morning. I don't know if either of you are off to any weddings this summer, but it's an expensive business, up by 18% in the last year.
Yeah, the Independent is saying the average wedding guest is going to spend over £1,000, which is like, are you getting married? That's
Exactly.
It is unbelievable. And accommodation, the biggest cost. It's not surprising. If you go to any sort of seaside town, the kind of places where a lot of people want to get married, the cost for a hotel, even a really terrible one for a single night,
get married abroad now, don't
people
they?
get married abroad.
Yeah,
and you have
the expensive that.
And then if you're invited,
and the stag
exactly,
do.
if you're invited to the stag do, then that's another expense, and you hope that they've chosen somewhere cheap in Eastern Europe or something like that, and not Dubai. So yeah, there's, obviously, inflation is a massive problem, but this
food
is
costs
way
alone.
above that.
I mean, food's 20% up as well. When you look what it takes to feed your guests and all that.
But the thing is, Eamonn, you don't have to have an expensive wedding.
No.
Everybody thinks now you have to go to some really posh country hotel and have, a very exotic. You don't have to. You can actually get married very cheaply if you want to.
Can you still, though? I think it's harder than ever by the sounds of it. The cost of everything going up, the cost of a dress, flowers. As soon as you mention a wedding, noughts are added on the end.
No, absolutely, but you can go to your local registrar, I think it's about £120, and you can get married literally with two strangers off the street as witnesses.
I know, but most people don't want that, do they?
I know most
Need
people
something
don't.
Instagram worthy, I think.
Yeah, maybe the pressure of Instagram with the flower wreath and everything else.
Well, that's it. Who are you getting married for? Are you getting married for you or to show everyone else?
Do you remember Carol Smiley on Changing Rooms, the Scottish presenter? She now marries people.
Oh, she's a celebrant.
Yeah, she buries people and marries people as well. But that's
not at the same time, hopefully.
Not at the same time. But you can do both in the one day.
My mum has a theory: the more you spend on a wedding, the shorter your marriage.
I think your mum's right.
She thinks that people can get all their priorities wrong. Yeah. Listen, Fraser Myers, Dawn Neeson, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Right, the time is 8 minutes now before 7 o'clock, and following the death of two people in a crowd crush at Brixton Academy last December, the venue's licence was suspended.
Yes, but now more than 20,000 representations have been submitted to Lambeth Council in support of it ahead of a review of that licence. And our national reporter, Thea Jacumba, has the story.
Since 1983, the Brixton Academy became one of London's leading music venues, hosting some of the biggest artists such as the Ramones and Madonna. Campaigners are now fighting to save it after the Metropolitan Police called for its permanent closure.
Yes, two people tragically died. It's awful. We're not ignoring that. But what we are saying is that there are ways to reopen this venue safely. It wasn't the building's fault. If there needs to be a change in management, a change in security, so be it. But those four walls deserve a future as a live music venue. People depend on it. Artists depend on it.
Since the campaign began, it's received support from established artists who've performed here in the past, all arguing for a reconsideration from Lambeth Council. Away from the venue, the local economy is worth an estimated £2 billion, with 40% of that spend happening after 6 p.m. But since the suspension, businesses have struggled.
So what we do know is that compared to the previous year, at the same time, we've seen a 28% drop in footfall in the area. But more importantly, what we also know is that per week, there is £540,000 of lost visitor spending in the area. So it's huge blow. To now, probably you're looking at 10, 11 million pounds of lost visitor spending for the area.
And industry representatives argue it's going to leave a void in the cultural economy and leave a considerable gap in the touring capability for artists.
People are going to lose jobs. There's one less platform for not only domestic and international artists to perform, but also for new talent to aspire to perform. You have to remember that this is a really important talent bed for new talent coming through the ranks, playing and supporting some of these big acts. So it's really important as a performance space for the UK and for London.
A decision is yet to be made by Lambeth Council after the venue operators Academy Music Group submitted proposals they believe will allow the venue to reopen safely. Thea Jacumba, GB News.
Please do stay with us. We'll have more on the future of the Home Secretary. Would you ask somebody for advice? Would you say, hey, could you not get me on a one-to-one course instead of going with a, what's it called, a what course?
A speeding awareness
course with all the great unwashed. Or what way would you handle it?
To be fair, she didn't say that. If
she didn't say it, but I'm saying that. If I was the Attorney General of the Home Secretary,
you'd say vermin.
I would say I'm not going to get me separate. Get me separate. I mean, I've got this title, I've got this job, or is that just beyond? Should she just be like everybody else? But the thing is, she's not everybody else.
Let us know your views. But first of all, here's your forecast. Apparently it's going to be sunny. Craig Snell has all the details.
Hello there, welcome to your GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. I'm Craig Snell. Well, looking ahead to this week, most of us it's going to be mainly fine and dry. A little bit of rain from time to time across the far north, but for most it's going to be a fairly warm and sunny week. So the reason for the settled weather is this area of high pressure really going to dominate the UK as we go through this week. Weather fronts will always try to come in across the very far north, and it's here where we will see the risk of some rain. And in fact, we've still got a weather front just clearing away across eastern Scotland as we go through this morning. So some cloud and some outbreaks of rain here first thing. Also some low cloud across eastern England too. So a bit of a grey start here, but further west, plenty of sunshine around, and that continues as we go into the afternoon. A very pleasant afternoon for a lot of the UK, and in the sunshine, temperatures reaching 23, possibly even 24 across the southwestern half of the UK. Please note high levels of UV if you are out and about. Into the evening, we could just see a few showers affecting the Pennines for a time, but they will quickly clear away. And then really the early hours of Tuesday morning, plenty of dry weather around. The odd mist and fog patch too, but under the clear skies, turning a little bit chilly in the countryside. Most towns and cities, however, probably staying up around 8 to 9 degrees. So Tuesday morning, a lot of us starting off with plenty of sunshine once any early mist and fog burns away, except from the very far north of Scotland here, some thicker cloud and some outbreaks of rain moving in as the day goes on. But elsewhere in the sunshine, feeling warm once again, highs potentially peaking again around 22, 23 degrees towards the southwest. But just like today, levels of UV will be high, so do take some precautions. A quick look at Wednesday and Thursday, very similar. Lots of dry and settled weather around. Sunniest of the skies will always be towards the south of the UK, and here by Thursday we could see temperatures reaching the mid-20s.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister meets with his ethics chief as pressure mounts for an inquiry into the Home Secretary's conduct.
Good to have you on board. Very nice to see you. The time, 7 o'clock on this Monday morning, 22nd of May.
Yeah, this is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's what's leading the news this morning.
Rishi Sunak will fly back to the UK today to decide the fate of Suella Braverman. Following allegations, she asked civil servants for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Union heads will lead a protest outside Westminster in opposition to a bill that would ban some workers from striking. The legislation returns to Parliament today, where it'll be scrutinised by MPs.
The Labour leader will lay out his plan for modernising the NHS with a pledge to look beyond just funding to fix the fundamentals. He will also commit to meeting all major health service targets in his first term.
And Prince William will pay tribute to the survivors of the Manchester Arena bombing 6 years on. He'll be speaking at the launch of a report into mental health failings in the wake of the event.
And a new address for you, gbnews.com is where you send your emails today, and you can watch all your favourite shows there and get in touch via Twitter as well. At GB News, but we've changed the .uk bit to .com to streamline things for our viewers and listeners all around the world. So we're global.
Yes, so it's GB News at gbnews.com.
So the top story in this Monday morning is that the Prime Minister will meet his ethics advisor today as he flies back to Britain to decide the fate of the Home Secretary.
Rishi Sunak's facing calls to investigate Suella Braverman over allegations she asked civil servants to help her avoid getting speeding points on her licence.
When asked about the story in Japan yesterday, the PM refused to publicly back Miss Braverman, saying he hadn't spoken to her and didn't know the full details.
Well, let's speak to the former political director to Boris Johnson, Alex Crowley, who joins us in the studio. Good morning to you, Alex. You're suspicious about the timing of all of this, because last week we had the Home Secretary, what some people thought was perhaps speaking out of turn with a little bit of a underhand leadership bid at that conference, NatCon, last week. What do you think is behind the revelations today?
Well, I mean, let's put it this way. This incident apparently occurred last year when she was Attorney General, and it's only just now that it's sort of emerging out into the press. This may look like unhelpful timing for the government, but maybe there will be some in Number 10 who won't be massively displeased with the timing. Rishi Sunak's general process for getting rid of a cabinet minister usually is to call in the ethics advisor. So if I were the Home Secretary this morning, I would be feeling quite nervous.
So the idea being, look, it's not me if it was left to me, but the ethics advisor said you were off course here.
Rishi Sunak never sacks anyone. No, he has advice from other very important, impartial people that tell him to sack them, and then he sacks them.
And this is very interesting, isn't it? The power of these ethics advisors. I mean, this is a relatively new, modern kind of way of managing, isn't it? I mean, in days gone by, was it always that, well, the ethic advisor told me he had to go, so he went?
No, this is one of the oldest tricks in the book. What you do if you're a leader, if you're a Prime Minister, you find some other person. The title changes over the years. Sometimes it's an ethics advisor. Other times, back in days gone by, it used to be the Cabinet Secretary.
Right.
You'll find some official. Yeah. It used to be, of course, Sue Gray back in the day.
Well, I was thinking that was your advice when you were advising Boris, maybe.
That turned out to go really well, didn't it? So the Prime Minister will always find somebody to mean that they don't look like the bad person in all of this. And that's the usual process.
And maybe Suella Braverman's mistake in all of this was to seek out an advisor in the first place. But when we are saying here the Prime Minister flies back to the UK to sort out the future of the Home Secretary, is it as bad as that? Is it?
No, he was flying back anyway.
Yeah.
He wasn't flying back for this.
No, but is
just
her
on his way
future in
back.
the balance is the question, I guess. You know, how serious is this for her?
Potentially very serious, because if he's got the ethics advisor to look at it, it means that person has to provide a formal opinion on the process that she's followed, and that tends to lead you down a negative path
But
for her.
This is difficult for the Prime Minister, because although he and Suella, obviously, you know, there's no love lost these days between them, she's quite useful in some ways in that she appeases a certain wing of the party. She also has that populist view that appeals to the public heading into an election. If he loses her, you know, that is difficult for the Prime Minister, because how's he going to fill Suella Braverman's boots?
I suspect he's already got the replacement in mind that most Prime Ministers usually do. Suella Braverman was useful to Rishi Sunak only in the sense that he can say to a certain wing of his party, I have you represented in the cabinet. So if she ends up going, then he may want to also be able to continue to say that and bring in somebody that represents that wing of the party. But let's see.
Can I just ask you, obviously, the Prime Minister seemed a bit tetchy when he was asked about this story at the G7.
Yeah.
Do you think it is a source of frustration when he's been working on a summit, you know, trying very hard to be seen on a global stage, to be talking about something as minor as, you know, speeding fine back over a year ago?
There's nothing more frustrating for a Prime Minister and his team than when you're trying to get something very important done and a bit of silliness emerges because of the behaviour of one of your team. Rishi Sunak has actually run quite a tight ship lately. It's been quite disciplined up until last week. And he will certainly be very keen to get back to that discipline as soon as possible.
He's hung by his own petard here, though, isn't he? Because of that vow last year about making everybody wider than white. So
he said it on the steps of Downing Street, which means that now any transgression, however minor or ridiculous, and this is a bit ridiculous, it means he really only has one choice.
I know we keep talking about her fine and whatever. She paid her fine, she paid her penalty. We're not questioning that point. It was just she basically said, look, if I have to do a speed awareness course, I'd rather do it on a one-to-one basis than...
She asked a question. You know, is that not her prerogative?
Well, it's a bit ridiculous. What probably happened, and we don't know the full details, of course, but what probably happened, she probably said to a private office, listen, I'd much rather do it one-to-one. Can you see if that's possible? And, of course, in her mind, she may well have thought, if the officials say, no, you must do it properly, she would have absolutely gone along with that. Is that her trying to get around the rules? I don't know. But she should also, of course, have been aware that, let's face it, the civil service isn't exactly massively keen on Tory ministers at the moment.
Just very shortly, we're going to talk to a Labour Minister for Health. And Keir Starmer is coming out with this pledge that he's going to sort out the problems of the NHS within his first term. Seriously?
I mean, as ever, of course, we have grand promises but very little detail. What's very interesting is that on the day that he's giving this speech, we also have a briefing from his own team in the Times today, and the quote, which I love, which is, the missions aren't working, not yet. They haven't cut through, so the third speech is now going to have to clear a very high bar. They've just not captured the public's attention. That's what his own team think of his speeches.
There we go. Well, let's put this to Andrew Gwynn, who's listening. Alex Crowley for now. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Alex.
Good morning to you, Andrew Gwynn, Shadow Public Health Minister. I don't know if you're able to hear that. We are expecting the third of 5 speeches from Sir Keir Starmer. Some panic from within his own guard that these messages simply aren't cutting through. Is that perhaps why he's gone for the hyperbole in terms of trying to cut all NHS? What was the phrase? I'll meet all big NHS targets in my first term as PM. That's unachievable, isn't it?
Well, no, I don't believe it is unachievable. Look, where we are at the moment, the NHS is on its knees. We want to see an NHS rebuilt and not just up off its knees, but running confidently towards the future. And that means we have to have a concerted and radical shift in how we do health here in England. And we are determined not just to have sticking plasters on the current problems that we see in the NHS, but we want to equip it for the future. So this is going to be a really bold and radical programme that involves a major shift in how we do health. So it means shifting from treating people in hospitals to treating them more in the community. It means a shift from analogue to digital, utilising modern technology. And it also means having a big shift away from curing sickness to prevention in the first place. And as Shadow Public Health Minister, that's something that I'm particularly excited about.
Yeah, but sorry to interrupt you. I don't know if you've seen the papers this morning. I mean, the front of the Times is quoting exactly that. The current government will be using existing technology to use the private sector to help support and cut down the waiting list, particularly in diagnostics. You're suggesting to the public they have to wait until Sir Keir Starmer's in power. The Tories are already doing it.
Well, no, look, we want the government to succeed on the NHS, but they are failing miserably. And the NHS doesn't need sticking plasters, it needs whole-scale reform. And only a Labour government is committed to driving through that radical programme of reform so that by the end of the first term of the Labour government, remember this is a 10-year programme, in the first term of a Labour government, we will guarantee that your ambulance will arrive in a safe time so that lives are saved. We will guarantee that you are able to see your GP when you need to. We will guarantee that you are able to access A&E without dangerously high and long waits, and we will guarantee that if you need specialist hospital treatment, your waiting times for that treatment will be cut. I think those are really ambitious targets, and you hold me to it after year 5 of a Labour government.
OK, Andrew, it'll be music to the ears of a lot of the striking unions, the nurses, the doctors, the ambulance drivers, whatever, who are all saying that. And a 10-year programme, but basically to do what you plan to do, it's not just about wage settlements, but huge amounts of money and investment are going to have to be involved in this. I put the standard question to you. How are you going to pay for it?
Well, look, it's not just about money, but in terms of money, we've been very upfront in the 2 big announcements that we've made so far on the huge increase that we are proposing in NHS staff, training the doctors, the nurses, the midwives, the health visitors and the care staff for the next generation, that we would pay for that through scrapping the non-dom tax status. And in terms of our radical reform of mental health, we would pay for that through closing some financial tax loopholes, but also scrapping the VAT exemption on private education. So we've been very clear on that, but let me make it even clearer. I'm not going to write Rachel Reeves' budget in 2030 now on College Green, but it has always been the priority of a Labour government to find the resources the NHS needs, and we make that commitment today.
You're just itching to get at this, Andrew, aren't you? I mean, I can just feel your impatience here.
I am. Well, I am, because, look, the NHS has to be patient-centred. We have to make sure that it works in the interests of those who need it at the time they need it. And what I see in my own constituency casework and what I hear from other MPs is an NHS that is desperately trying to do that. The staff are trying to do that, but they're held back by a government that really isn't committed to the NHS. We know the reform that's needed. We know the change that's needed. Digital is a big part of that. I mean, for example, 33 million people now use the NHS app, and things like AI. Screening for lung cancer is 60% more accurate. So these are the big shifts we need, but we also need to be less focused on hospital and more focused on care in the community, in the home setting, closer to where people need it and where they're more comfortable at receiving it as well.
I was just going to say the jury's still out on sort of your funding model there. I mean, obviously you're not in government yet, but this suggestion that the non-dom scrapping will pay for it or sorting out private school charitable status, I mean, there's lots of controversy surrounding that, not least the impact that it will have on the public sector. But I don't want to get into all of that. Other people praising the debate around the NHS, moving on from just being about more money and actually talking about the ideology behind the way it should be run. And it is a refreshing debate to be had. Can I just pick your brains on Suella Braverman in all of this? Do you think that she needs to face an ethics advisor inquiry?
Well, Look, I've got real frustration here about this because at a time of a cost of living crisis that people want real answers to, at the time that our NHS is on its knees and needs fixing, we're here yet again talking about another Tory minister who has sought to bend the rules, play the system for their own advantage. Of course, she needs to face an ethics advisor. I would go further. I think Rishi Sunak needs to show some leadership and show her the door.
All right, Andrew Gwynn, Shadow Public Health Minister, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you for your time, appreciate it. The time is 7:15. Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. Here's how they stand.
The Trade Secretary will travel to Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates this week in a bid to agree new trade deals. Ahead of the 5-day trip, Kemi says she wants to strengthen the UK's strong trade and investment relationships with the Gulf nations.
10 years today since the murder of the soldier Lee Rigby, and his son has raised £40,000 in a charity bid to honour his father. 12-year-old Jack has said the fundraiser would enable them to continue to help him and hundreds of other children just like him. Lee Rigby was 25 when he died after being attacked by extremists and in Woolwich in 2013.
We've been talking about this morning. Let us know your views. The average wedding guest is set to spend more than £1,000 this year, according to American Express. Cash, couples' experiences and kitchen appliances are among the most popular gifts that guests are planning to purchase this year.
Right, the big question, the big showbiz question is what is happening at ITV over their flagship daytime programme this morning. So apparently nothing's going to happen over the next 2 weeks. They're going to cloud or muddy the waters with different presenters. And then let's see what happens. I suspect what will happen is they will put Queen Holly in and have different presenters alternating around her, the way they do on the One Show there.
All of this, of course, follows the big announcement on Saturday from Phillips that he was stepping down.
Oh, stop, please, let's just stop this. He was sacked. Right, all this nonsense about giving him credit. I've decided to step down. I'm sure you did. Sure you did. Here's your P45. Now step down. You know, why do we propagate this language use? I've decided to step down, and she says, the couch will not feel the same without him being there. Well, she wanted him not there, so what's she moaning about the couch not feeling the same for? I mean, they deserve each other, I suppose. Let's go outside Television Centre in West London. Who have we got there, Isabel?
Lisa Hartle this morning outside Television Centre. Bring us up to date, Lisa.
Hello, good morning. Well, yes, as you say, on Saturday we heard that Philip Schofield was stepping down after over 20 years presenting the show. This came after reports of a rift between him and his co-presenter Holly Willoughby. In a statement, he said the programme had become the story and he wants to do everything he can to protect the show he loves. Today, Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary will be presenting the show. They present usually every Friday. Holly Willoughby will be remaining as a presenter on the show. She's taken an early leave from the show for the half term and is expected to return on the 5th of June. Holly, as you say, posted a statement on Instagram thanking Philip for his wisdom over the years and that the sofa wouldn't be the same without him. Now, contenders to take over presenting roles are Rochelle and Marvin Humes, Ryland Clark, Josie Gibson, Gino DeCampo and, of course, Dermot O'Leary and Alison Hammond. Presenters for the rest of the week are yet to be confirmed by ITV, but Philip Schofield said that he will be presenting the Soap Awards next month, and ITV said that he is due to front a new primetime show that they've got planned coming up this year.
OK, Lisa, thank you very much. Keep your eyes peeled in case you see any other possible contenders arriving for interviews.
Well, is there no Eamonn and Ruth on that list that you had there? No.
Oh, yeah, I missed that one. Yeah, that is. Sorry, I forgot to read that bit.
No, I don't think the woman that runs ITV Daytime will have anything to do with that.
Well,
I don't think they'll do that.
Stay with us. We're going to
wait a minute. No, we're not finished with this.
Okay.
There's so many unanswered questions. I mean, all this is nonsense. So she gets 2 weeks off now. Holly gets 2 weeks off to see if any controversy. ITV will say nothing about this. And then what are ITV making a statement for, saying, we will continue to support Philip? Well, if he stepped down, That's his decision. Why are you supporting him? And you're supporting him in what way?
Well, there's lots of questions about why someone who's been on a show for 20 years isn't having a leaving party, isn't having a big send-off on the show. Obviously, there's, you know, bad blood. Why? What's behind it all? I think that's a legitimate question. Is there something more sinister bubbling? Who knows?
Well, most of us get the idea of what's behind it all, but just stop all this pretense, reporting that he stood down and that she says the sofa won't feel the same without him. Good. She's thinking,
I don't know what that means.
Well, wait a minute. What's she pretending that the sofa won't feel the same without him when she wants rid of him? Just tell the blooming truth. Do you think the two of them have actually spoken to each other? I think there's one headline today, it's the front of the Sun, where he says, I'm completely broken. Well, he's completely broken because TV is the only thing in his life. But he feels he's been knifed. Knifed by who? I wonder who has knifed him. ITV bosses? Holly? Why have ITV bosses have knifed him? Why are they continuing to giving him 2 more programmes?
Well, contracts, I suppose, because he's going to be presenting the Soap Awards, I think, next month, isn't it? And there's another show he's involved in.
He knows as much about
these are
soap
Eamonn's
as
thoughts.
you do.
Let us know your thoughts.
Soap, him and Soap Awards. You see, the other thing is, I mean, you'll see my phone. I can show you my phone. All this business about him being missed. Major people in the industry, you know, just heralding, just saying, good riddance, really, with all of this. Who wants to receive a Soap Award from him? Would you want to receive a Soap Award from him? You know, I just was, when are ITV going to stop this pretense that he's much loved by the nation?
We just have to know what's going on. There's no reason not to accept an award from him unless
Holly knows the
happened.
truth, what goes on. The story is with her. So is she going down with the sinking ship? Stop all the falseness and pretending, oh, we love each other. Well, that's what they were great at. They were great at being false.
Well, they were good friends for a long time.
But they were very good at being false. Like, so anything I should say, you should now buckle over and go... That's why they called them Pip and Squeak.
Are you saying I'm not good at being false?
No, you're not good at being false, which is a good thing. They are the best people at being false that I've ever seen on TV, and I have seen some bad ones. I have seen some really...
Well, there's nothing false about what you're saying this morning. Listen, GBNews at gbnews.com for your thoughts on the controversial showbiz story of the year, probably.
We're talking about striking next and ask whether some workers should be banned from striking. A bill requiring minimum levels of service returns to Parliament. Strike or not to be able to strike? That is the question.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back at 7:26. Still to come on today's programme.
10 years since the death of soldier Lee Rigby. Now his son Jack is running a marathon to support a charity that supports bereaved military children. Jack's just 12 years of age now. We'll be speaking to its founder at 7:45.
8:10, we're speaking to Vanity Fair royal editor Katie Nicholl, as it's rumoured that Meghan Markle could return to TV as the host of a chat show. Wouldn't she just love that?
Gosh.
She could become the new Oprah Winfrey.
Who's she presenting that with? Phillips Schofield?
Stop it. Your 2 favourites.
Well, my 2 favourites together. You can join any of our discussions. Please do get involved.
Lots of emails in support of you this morning from our viewers. Eamonn speaking it like it is.
Well, you know what really gets me? People who talk about bullying, people who have no idea what they're talking about, and people talking about, am I bitter? Oh, too right, I'm bitter, yeah. But I don't, I'll say it as it is, I'll tell the truth. Other people won't. They'll avoid the whole question of what's going on and the little cabal run there at ITV in the morning. Believe me, this morning's a lovely programme. It will stay a lovely programme. It will be watched no matter who presents it. It does not... He tries to claim it as his programme. It was great going on the National Television Awards. Used to go on and get an award for the programme. And of course, he wouldn't mention anybody else but him and Holly, you know, all the time. But that was him. That was him. He's just think it's all about him. Well, I think you'll find it's not, Phil. GB Views at gbnews.com. Union leaders did a whole protest today against a law that would stop some workers from being able to strike.
Yes, the trade unions Congress says employees in health, education, fire, transport and border control industries could be sacked if they don't attend after lawfully voting to strike.
Former Assistant General Secretary of the RMT, there's Steve Hadley. He thinks the new law is a slide towards authoritarianism.
Meanwhile, journalist and former MEP Martin Daubney says we need MPs with the guts to smash the unions. Let's go to you, Steve Hadley, first of all. We've got the big bill returning to Parliament today to be discussed, whether or not this minimum level of service should be brought in. What have you got against it?
Well, there's a couple of things. First of all, I don't think it's going to work. We're European countries where they have this legislation in. It doesn't actually work. France, it's observed more in the breach, really, than in the observance, because workers just won't obey it. Secondly, I think it's an attack on civil liberties. It's a human right. They strike, they withdraw your labour. The only people that can't withdraw their labour are slaves. And what this government are attempting to do is prevent people protesting. You can see the same thing in the Public Order Act, and it's a slide towards authoritarianism. And they're trying to make the trade unions responsible for getting people to cross their own picket lines. And people are being told that if they don't cross their own picket lines, then they can be sacked. And of course, the unions will be sequestrated. Their funds will be taken off them.
Martin?
Well, Martin, as Steve says, it's a human right to strike. Do you agree?
Well, it's a human right to be able to work. And the fact of the matter is the conversation has moved on now because £31 billion of public money has been pumped into the rail network over the last 2 years, post-pandemic and during the pandemic. That's £300,000 for every rail worker, £1,000 for every household. People like Steve don't care about our ability to be able to go out and work, but us to be able to earn a wage. These minimum service levels, they work in Italy, they work in Spain. They've gone further in America. They've outlawed strikes on the rail networks. And the taxpayer has a right and a responsibility. And Steve, you're being economical with the truth about people being sacked because the Lords have made amendments to this bill. That's not going to happen. This isn't about pay, it's about politics. Steve wants to take us back to the dark days of 1970s socialism. You're a Corbynista, admit it. This is about politics, not pay.
Steve?
Well, at least I'm not some sort of fascist who barely beat the monster Raven Looney Party in his last elections. There you go. I'd rather avoid personal insults and deal with the issues. So the reality is this. I mean, your great friend Liz Truss trashed the economy. We have the Tory government mishandling of Brexit. We have several other economic issues that have driven people in this country to the brink where they have no option but strike because the cost of living has gone through the roof, wages haven't kept pace with inflation, and people are the last option because they can't negotiate inflation pay rises, which means they're taking real term pay cuts, is that people are going on strike. Now, the reality is this, if people are prevented from going on strike through official channels, and we've got the most restrictive anti-union legislation in Europe, in this country, something that Blair used to boast about, actually. If people can't go on strike through official channels, then the reality is that they will take unofficial action. They will have a building up of people who will just not accept either the dictates of the government or the trade union bureaucracy, and they will take action independently. And you're absolutely right. I do want to return to some aspects of the 70s where the wealth distribution in this country was a lot better and people like you had to pay all their taxes and couldn't avoid them so easily.
Martin, I mean, there's a son of a coal miner who presumably was wrapped up in some of the strikes in the 70s and 80s. What do you make of those comments?
Well, the fact of the matter is that Nottinghamshire, where my father worked for 47 years down the pit, they were told to go on strike by Scargo. They were never given a vote. And if they were given a vote, they might have gone for it. But people like you, Steve, you don't want to give people the choice. This is about telling people what to do. People have the right to work.
I do. I want people to have a choice.
Can I finish my point? Can I finish my point?
Steve, let Martin finish his point and we'll come straight back to you, Steve, if you will. Thank you, Martin.
We're in a cost of living crisis with £2 trillion in national debt. The kind of pay rises you guys and the nurses even more are after would send us into eye-watering, stratospheric, historic levels of national debt, which has to be picked up by the taxpayer. All of this is paid for by everybody who can't get to work. You talk about the right to strike. What about my right to work?
Steve?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, the electorate told you didn't have a right to work because your policies were absolutely appalling. So let's get that one into perspective. The reality is this: I am a total Democrat. We have in this country very restrictive legislation, which means that not only once, but every 6 months, people have to renew the mandate they strike, and that has to be over 50% of the people involved have to deliver a yes vote to strike. That's democracy. What is not democracy is people being forced across the picket line at gunpoint by the government, either with a threat of being sacked or with a threat of their trade union being sequestrated from all its money. So you're being economical with the truth, not me. You're on here to revive your flagging career.
Well, hang on. No, let's not get into. Excuse me. Hang on a minute. Let's not get into. No, sorry, Steve. Let's not get down to personal comments. It's not necessary. But what I will pick up on, I mean, you're talking about at gunpoint. That's just simply not true. Martin, if you want to come back, and we'll try and keep this civilised, chaps.
Why?
Well, I mean, it's funny how Steve thinks being called a Corbynista is an insult. I mean, it's not an insult. It's just a fact that's your politics. You're a hardcore socialist. The last time you were on Breakfast with me, you admitted so. And as for like coming on national television and calling me a fascist because I was electorally mandated to go to Brussels and get Brexit done. You're losing the plot, Steve. You're absolutely losing the plot. Let's try and keep this on point.
You were thrown out by your electorate. In the last election you stood in, the Monster Raven Party nearly got as much votes as you did. Independents beat you. You represent no one.
Steve, I got voted into. I can't even talk.
Well,
I got voted into the European Union with 500,000 votes in the West Midlands to get Brexit done.
Look, well, what about getting unions done, Martin? We've talked about the pain of unions as you see them, Martin. What about the gain of unions? Would you accept there's any gain to be had from being represented by a union in this day and age?
Yes, absolutely. I think negotiating pay deals is a human right. But I also think that calling out a general strike, and these strikes have been coordinated. I mean, it's an open secret that the nursing unions, the teaching unions, the road unions were coming together. People like Steve want general strikes. They want the country to be brought to its knees, to destroy the Tory government. That's what this is about. And in fact, this was a 2019 manifesto pledge of the Conservatives, was to introduce minimum service levels. It's taken them 4 years to get around to it. And even now, the Chancellor is going to be very watered down by the Lords. The right to sack people that Steve talks about isn't actually in this. It's been taken out by the Lords. Yes. And if Labour Party get in, which is looking likely, they'll scrap this bill altogether. So it's window dressing from the Conservatives, talking tough too late. But people are getting fed up of strikes, and strikes aren't working. We've been going on for this. The Grinch McLynch stole Christmas. It's now the summer. We're still in Groundhog Day. So what you're proposing, Steve, isn't actually being effective, is it?
Right, guys, got to leave it there. Thank you, Steve Headley and Martin Dobney. Appreciate that. Thank you very much indeed. The time now, 24 minutes
Just
before
looking at the
8 o'clock.
inbox reacting to that little row there. Yeah. Lots of people getting involved. Make it illegal. It's gone on for far too long. Sack the striking workers. But I have to say, the inbox actually exploding about this morning, and everybody's saying, we love Eamonn. Thank you for saying it like it is. And I'll try and get a selection of those. But I have to say, a lot of emails sharing your views this morning.
Well, so there it is, to strike or not to strike. Martin Dobney made a very interesting point there. Although I believe in trade unions, I believe the right to anybody to join a trade union, you've got to look and you say, strikes don't seem to be working. They don't seem to be working. What's your view on that, folks? Let us know. But please, whatever you do, stay with us, because we are going... What are we going to be doing? We're going to be talking...
talk some more about Phillips. Go, Phil.
This morning in the newspapers. Next, look at them smiling. Should they go down together? That's the question. Don Neeson, Fraser Myers. Next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very nice to see you again. We are going to go through the newspapers on this Monday morning, and joining us, Dawn Neeson, alongside Fraser Myers from Spiked magazine.
And
very good
Dawn,
to see you.
really only one story in town in terms of showbiz, and I have to just reflect the inbox quickly. Pauline says, I think Phil Schofield's well past his sell-by date. Let's face it, he had a good run. Time for some new up-and-coming presenters
That's
on
not
the
the
show.
issue.
Linda says...
Sorry, I just want to say something. That's not the issue. He's a very good presenter, but that's not the issue. You're all missing the point.
Linda says the mistake a lot of these presenters is they think they're bigger than the show. Amy says, personally, I'm relieved to see Schofield go. I prefer Dermot and Alison anyway. Irene says, I've never been that keen on him. I feel ITV have treated him badly. At the end of the day, he took Holly under his wing when she joined, and I think there should be more gratitude for this. And I agree with Eamonn, it's all fake, says Lisa.
Well, it is fakery. It's fakery. It was every day is fakery. And, you know, sometimes there are... You can only judge people by their actions, and you can only speak as you find. And there's some people who find Philip Schofield the nicest person in the whole world. I personally didn't, but I do believe speak as you find.
I also think... Who cares if he's a nice person or not? Plenty of people in this industry aren't nice people. There's more to it, this story, than meets the eye. And what I want to know is why suddenly things have changed. Why have they fallen out? What's behind it? Because I think, personally, that's the story.
Well, Holly Willoughby is the one that knows the answer to that. And she's
how's the Sun covering
not
it?
talking about it.
The Sun have led the way on this one, haven't they? They've had exclusives pretty much every day now. This is the front page today, and they have pictures of Phil sitting in a car down in Cornwall, which is where he's from, with his poor mum. I feel sorry for his mum.
One son in jail for paedophilia, one son booted out of ITV with no explanation.
Yeah, and as Eamonn's already been discussing, they say that Philip Schofield feels like he's been knifed by ITV bosses and possibly Holly as well. He's getting a 6-month payoff, and Holly's off on holiday.
Wish somebody had knifed me with 6 months payoff.
Well, I was about to say that as well.
Yeah.
But I mean, it is the ongoing saga, and there are some very... To me, they look very carefully posed up pictures of Schofield, sort of like looking suitably distraught.
Well, you wouldn't need to leave the house, would you? I mean, he knows he's going to be photographed.
Yeah,
wherever
no,
he goes,
I
so
think
what's he
it's
up to?
Yeah. So he's got a stress vape and everything. So it's poor little me. But I think the interesting point of this story is the statements. There is so much more going on to it than meets the eye, and I think a lot of people out there are aware that there are other stories that will potentially come out. Obviously, we can't go into it now, but that is the story. But where we are at the moment is that they are no more after a very long relationship together. The Mail have also done a very interesting piece analysing Holly's statement in particular, where she actually really didn't mention Phil much by name and reference their friendship, even though they've been going on holiday together for years. And she said the sofa won't feel the same without him, and a little pink heart emoji. Now, this has been interpreted, I'm not up to speed on emojis, I often get many of them wrong, but a little pink heart emoji, rather than the red one, means girl power. So this is a hidden message that basically what Holly wants, Holly gets, and she's got her girl gang. But, I mean, you know, this started to fall apart in 2020 when she left their joint management agency and set up her own entirely female-staffed PR agency and management agency. And then, of course, last year with the queue jumping to see the Queen. And the writing was on the wall there. There are more stories to come out. I think we all know that, and I think that's why ITV have acted now and sacked him, because they're very aware of what will come out. But
the interesting thing, Fraser, about daytime television is that it's so intense, it's so competitive, it's whatever, and yet there is a huge majority of people in the country who never see it because it's on when they're working.
That's true. You have to be retired or unemployed or off sick,
or a student.
Or a student. Yeah. And you know, what's funny, I like the way that these sort of statements are very much in the vein of daytime TV. They're so very fake and schmaltzy, and you know, she's stabbed him in the back or whatever. She's managed to get him off the.
But is it stabbing? Look,
and is saying it won't be the same. You know, she was behind the.
But is that stabbing him in the back?
Yes, she made her name on the back of him.
Yes, but if he's done something that she doesn't want to be associated with, and she said either he goes or I go, is that stabbing someone in the back, or is that saying, hang on, I have my own professional integrity and I don't want to be associated with something?
Excuse me, if she has her own professional integrity, why isn't she coming out in public and saying, I have my own professional integrity, he has done something which will reflect badly on me, but she again is being as false as he is, and nobody is talking about the elephant in the room, and that's it. She says, I thank him, and I take this into account, for all his knowledge, his experience and his humour, all the things that she didn't have when she came to the show, right? Well, it's absolutely true. It's absolutely true. So she used that, so I would call that stabbing in the back. I would call it stabbing in the back.
You talk about the statements. His statement was, it was very weird again, wasn't it? As Fraser's quite rightly said, it's very This Morning and daytime TV sort of like language. And he kept going about how kind he's been. And a lot of people in the business said, well, that's the least, the least thing you are, actually. And, you know, I just keep going back, and I know this might be a bit personal, Eamonn, but his kindness wasn't much in evidence when he really rudely interrupted Ruth when she was trying to do a link to Loose Women.
Listen, I could give you a list of the lack of kindness and the lack of awareness from both of them about how they would socialise or know people around them. You just have to look at my phone full of people who are glad to see the back of the two of them. But that doesn't come out in public because there is another word here, the F word, fear. There is a fear. For some reason, he has, as Katie Hind in the Mail today says, he had the power, and did he love to wield it. Now, no one's actually sure why he had this power within ITV, but he did. And even at the end, Fraser, ITV are still giving him programmes. He's got a programme, he's got a Soap Award, and he's got another programme coming up, which they're seeing him, and they said they will continue to support him. So my point, support him in what?
And as you know, as you mentioned earlier, the 6th month of pay, which is extraordinary, you know.
So how does he wield all this support? Because he's not the best presenter in the world. So why is he so invaluable?
Did they give you support when you left?
Absolutely
ITV?
not. I was out the door. I wasn't even given a reason why I was out the door. And people say, oh, you're bitter, whatever, Eamonn. I didn't get a text from either of those two, either one of them, to say, sorry it ended this way, or good luck for the future.
And yet you sat on the sofa when he decided to come out.
Like everyone else, I was conned into him coming out to what it was all about and whatever. But that's all wasn't the real story.
Do you think one of the reasons, Eamonn, that you weren't given a reason is Philip? Do you think he was one of the reasons?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
Do you think Philip was one of the reasons that you got rid of?
Well, he wouldn't have fought. He wouldn't have fought for me. I mean, it's a terrible cabal of people who run ITV daytime, and indeed who run ITV. It has to be said, the Queen of Oak, Dame EasyJet, who runs it, and you know, whether she can't stand me or Piers Morgan or anybody, she has a little type of presenter who I can name, who are good and clean and squeaky and don't break the rules on anything, and that's all fine. But look, it's the way it is, and people talk about TV. Well, it's our jobs, it's how we earn our living, it's how we earn our income. How else are we supposed to do it? And if you've got people ganging up against against you and protecting themselves against you. It's pretty shoddy.
But with a smile, always.
Always with
yeah.
But you see,
Daytime smile.
So here's my point. The smile is in the false smile. And I ask this question, will Holly Willoughby be able to survive without Phillips' cloak around her? And that is a question. I don't know the answer to that. But I think, Dawn, she has to be tarnished by whatever comes out or whatever is the fallout for all of this.
I think whatever, if the dam does really burst on all the stories that are, going around on social media and people are talking about in the Indian industry, then there will be questions asked about not just Holly, but about lots of people working in ITV about why you didn't act sooner, why you didn't say something. I think, it's a very, very tricky situation. I think, to be fair to Holly, it's a tricky situation.
I do
for her to be in.
I agree, I have to say.
You agree what?
It's a difficult situation for Holly to be in, having not personally done anything herself.
Well, you say that. I am very close to everything that goes on, and I don't think it's a difficult situation for her to be in. I think it's a selfish situation for her to be in. And the other thing I'm going to say, as for Q-Gate, and they were there making a film, of course, has anybody ever seen this film? Has anybody ever seen a clip from this film?
And I did queue up for 6.5 hours as well, by the way,
Did
as
anybody
a journalist.
Stop lying to us. Lies. They were not there to make a film, and we're supposed to all believe they were there to make a film. No, they weren't.
Dawn Leeson, Fraser-Myers, we're out of time on the paper.
Oh, really?
We did one story. But you know what? I promise we'll have a higher story count in the next one, and we're going to talk about something incredibly sad now. So we say thank you to both of you.
Thank you.
And we'll see you just after 8:30.
Today's the 10th anniversary of soldier Lee Rigby's murder.
Yeah, the father of one who was killed brutally by a terrorist in South London.
Well, now his 12-year-old son, Jack was 2 then, he's now 12, has already raised £40,000 for the charity's Scotty's Little Soldiers, and that helps support bereaved military children.
I'm pleased to say we can talk now to the founder of Scotty's Little Soldiers, Nikki Scott. Very good morning to you, Nikki. Look, a fantastic achievement, the £40,000, but a terribly sad milestone today, and I suppose the big motivation behind it all.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's amazing to see where Jack is today, and he's been a member of Scotty since he was 2, and we'll continue to support him, right up to the age of 25. So we're very much a military community for the bereaved families. But it's amazing that he came to us and he said, I want to do some fundraising. I want to do my marathon. I want to do something positive because I know people are going to be talking about my dad at this time. And I just want to put a bit of positivity out there, which is so mature for a 12-year-old lad to say. So yeah, we're very proud of Jack here.
What's lovely is that 10 years on, through his lad, now 12, Lee's memory continues to mean something.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's what we talk about at Scotty's with the children and young people. It's not just we're here to support them emotionally, with all the challenges, as they go through childhood, this never goes away, does it? When you experience the death of a parent, it's there forever. So we're there to support them whenever those tough times come. But actually, we're there also to help them, realise you can celebrate your parents' death. You can celebrate their memory and do things to keep their memory alive. It's so important we keep talking about them and they're still a part of their life.
I know, Nikki, we're using Lee and Lee's memory and Lee's anniversary as a peg for all of this. But tell us about the people no one ever talks about, the bereaved military children, their dads or their mums go out to work and don't come back.
Yeah, I mean, Scotty's is supporting just over 600 bereaved military children right now, but there's so many more out there that don't yet know about us, which is, Jack's also helping with that. He's not just raising money, he's helping to raise the profile so that, if there's a bereaved military child, they can come forward and speak to us. It's so hard to find some, especially the older ones. But yeah, it's about, when you, I know, for example, my husband was killed in Afghanistan in 2009, that, saw our 2 children, there was limited support. So I think it's just about, helping them. You don't just experience the death of your parent, you're also living in that military community. So then you have to move home, change schools, make new friends. There's so many secondary losses that go with it. So to be able to join Scotty's and become a community again is really important for those children.
Goodness, thank you for shining a light on that. I mean, I'm sorry for your loss as well and for your kids' loss.
I just wanted to know from
so
you,
sad.
Nikki, when you were told about the death of your husband, how was that relayed to you? Because that just must be the most awful, awful thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's that nightmare. I think every for me, an army wife, I think it's that you never think it's going to be you, so you never quite believe it, and you have so much to think about and deal with on top of trying to come to terms with that Lee's never going to come home. You just never think it's going to be you. But actually, for me, the first thing and worst thing I could think of is how am I going to tell my 5-year-old son and my 7-month-old daughter she's going to have no memories. And that for me was the hardest thing. And I'm so proud that now Scotty's is here to be able to help support. We can't make it better, but we can definitely provide tools, guidance, and just a community so these families just never feel alone and forgotten.
And I love how you give your children, you give so many other children a role, a title, a regiment. They're known as Scotty's little soldiers. They are somebody, aren't they? They have a role.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we call our 0 to 18-year-olds our Scotty members, and then our 18 to 25-year-olds our springboarders. And we've developed like a council, so we have, so it's just about making sure that their voice is heard. We can be childhood bereavement experts, but actually, until you ask the children what they need, you never know that you're going to get it right. So it's all about listening to their voice and hearing what they need.
Well, I want to direct people, if they're moved by what you're saying, to your website, Scotty's Little Soldiers. Check it out, and they'll be able to support Jack and indeed the amazing work that you do. And I suppose, you know what, although that was probably the hardest thing you've ever had to do, telling your kids about your husband, I bet your kids helped you keep going.
Well, Nikki Scott, we have to go, and all we do is salute you. Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.
Bit of perspective there.
Bit of perspective,
on everything, really. Look, stay with us. We'll have more for you in just a moment on the future of the Home Secretary. Stay with us.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister meets with his ethics chief as pressure mounts for an inquiry into the Home Secretary's conduct.
A very good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. It's 8 o'clock on Monday, the 22nd of May. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel.
Leading the news on this Monday morning as we start a new week.
Rishi Sunak will fly back to the UK today to decide the fate of Suella Braverman following allegations she asked civil servants for special treatment over a speeding fine.
Union heads will lead a protest outside Westminster in opposition to a bill that would ban some workers from striking. The legislation returns to Parliament today, where it will be scrutinised by MPs.
The Labour leader will lay out his plan for modernising the NHS this morning with a pledge to look beyond just funding to fix the fundamentals. He'll also commit to meeting all major health service targets in his first term.
And Prince William will pay tribute to the survivors of the Manchester Arena bombing 6 years on. He's speaking at the launch of a report into mental health failings in the wake of the event.
Yeah, a shocking number of young people didn't get any support after that. Really quite staggering. Do get in touch. We love to hear from you. So many of you have been doing so already. You've already got the hang of our new address. It is gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep those thoughts coming in. And remember, you can also watch all of your favourite shows right here on gbnews.com.
So what is going on with the Home Secretary and the Prime Minister? Well, he will meet his ethics advisor today. He's flying back to Britain to decide the fate of Suella Braverman.
Rishi Sunak is facing calls to investigate Suella Braverman over allegations that she asked civil servants to help her avoid getting speeding points on her licence.
Well, he was asked about this yesterday in Japan, and he refused to publicly back the Home Secretary, saying he hadn't spoken to her and he did not know the full details.
Well, let's check in with our political reporter Olivia Utley, who's in Westminster for us. We're in a bit of a familiar holding pattern, aren't we? I haven't spoken to her. I'm deferring to my ethics advisor. What do you think the outcome will be of all of this?
Well, I think that Suella Braverman's case for the defence is relatively strong. She argues that she didn't ask civil servants to help her. She asked whether they could help her. She asked if they could help her. And when they said no, she accepted the points on her licence and didn't take the private speed awareness course that she was asking about. So that's the case for the defence. She's also saying, and so are her closest allies, both in the Telegraph and in the Mail, that this is all simply a smear campaign, that she is working very hard to get net migration down. She's arguing to curb the number of student visas that are being offered, which bring with them dependents, which is massively inflating our immigration numbers. And this has got her into a row with the Education Secretary, Gillian Keegan, the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, and the Prime Minister. So she's saying that what's going on is that civil servants who like having higher net migration want to get rid of her. And we have seen that there has been sort of some would argue that there has been precedence for that, where civil servants have managed to sort of get rid of ministers they don't like the sound of. So that is going to be Suella Braverman's defence. That said, the ministerial code, which Suella Braverman has been accused of breaking, explicitly says that they must not ask civil servants to act in a way that is not in accordance with the Civil Service Code, i.e. that asking them to give her special treatment was breaking it. So it'll be really interesting. Rishi Sunak speaking to Laurie Magnus, his ethics advisor, today. Suella Braverman is facing questions in the chamber at 2:30 this afternoon, and then the Prime Minister is doing a G7 statement at 3:30. So I think we can expect fireworks this afternoon. If I had to bet, I would say that Suella Braverman will manage to keep her job through this, but don't hold me to that.
And interesting, the Prime Minister trying to regain, I guess, control of the narrative with that statement at 3 o'clock on the G7, because virtually none of the papers talking about what was achieved at the summit or what wasn't achieved. All of us talking about something that happened a year ago, a very sort of, some people would say, petty domestic issue rather than the sort of international issues he's been tackling all weekend.
Well, exactly. It's pretty annoying for the Prime Minister. But let's not forget, this isn't the only time that Suella Braverman has got into trouble for seemingly, being accused of breaking the ministerial code. Last October, she had to resign from Liz Truss's government, or she was pushed out. It was never quite clear, because of claims she corresponded by her private email account using important Home Office classified documents. Rishi Sunak, of course, decided that was OK and invited her to be Home Secretary in his government, formed the following week. But she was already on pretty thin ice as far as civil servants were concerned. And so this is a problem for the Prime Minister and, as you say, a big distraction for him.
Olivia, thank you very much indeed. Leave it there. 5 minutes, 6 minutes actually, just coming up to past 8 o'clock. Royal Matters now. In the studio, we have Katie Nicholl, the author and royal editor of Vanity Fair. So much to talk to you about. We'll come to Prince William in a moment, but surely tell me this is not true. CNN are rumoured to be lining up the Duchess of Sussex, Meghan Markle, for her own TV show.
I'm not sure it's her own TV show. Gayle King is going to have a new TV show with someone called Charles Barkley, and they're calling it King Charles because of the play on both of their names, which of course gets everyone terribly interested. But they want Meghan as their first guest to launch the show or be in that first season. Her aides say that she hasn't committed to anything, but the producer on the new show is saying, we think this is an important part for her rebranding, all of which we're seeing at the moment, this more serious image of the Duchess of Sussex and going down more the philanthropic route and what she said she was going to go and do, rather than being in the headlines.
So you see this as a one-off, maybe just a one-off?
Yes, I think the idea is that she'll be part of the launch of this show, which is with one of her friends, Gayle King. And I think if she's going to do an interview, she'll want to do it with
no truth to the rumours that I'm putting about today that she will be paired up with Phillips Schofield?
I think that's pretty unlikely, although it would be a bit of an explosive combination, wouldn't it?
Let's turn our attention to Prince William then, doing what he does best, which is speaking out about something that he's experienced himself, problems with his mental health, and this time in relation to the 6-year anniversary today of the Manchester Arena bombing.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, that it's 6 years. And of course, last year, William and Kate were in Manchester for the unveiling of the memorial to the victims of the bombing. I think what's so interesting about this is a report that's being compiled between Lancaster University and the National Emergencies Trust, of which William is a patron. And the 9 survivors have got together with these organisations to look into how much help or lack of help survivors of this bombing received. And as you said earlier, the stats are really shocking. Almost a third of the children and young people affected didn't get any help at all.
I mean, when you imagine what those kids experienced, going there thinking they were going to see a pop star, all so excited, G'd up, whatever, and the worst thing happening and seeing what they saw and to have no support, a third of them.
4 in 10.
Staggering.
4 in 10 said that it was never offered to them, which I think is unbelievable. And William said, we must listen to their stories now in order to learn for the future. But what's interesting about his comments is they come just as the government is about to finalise this survivors' charter. And so I think you see not only William doing something that he's passionate about, as you say, bereavement is something very close to his heart, as is mental health. But we're also seeing him in this soft power diplomatic role where it's almost soft lobbying, isn't it, with the government knowing this charter is coming up, saying, look at this, this is not good enough and we have to do better.
Yeah, and that doesn't seem controversial somehow. I mean...
No, because no one can argue that this is acceptable. And that's where you see, I think, the royals being brilliant soft power diplomats and actually able to do something where sometimes politicians can't.
There's Amazon Prime have a series called Citadel. I just underlined a reference made to what's she now? The Duchess
she is
of
the Princess of Wales.
Princess of Wales, which is an incredibly crude reference being made in this polished drama.
Yeah.
I'm not asking you to read it out or anything.
No,
else,
I won't, because I think it's terribly disrespectful. But you know what, Eamonn, it's not the first. It's the second alleged slur against the Princess of Wales, because apparently there was one in the Little Mermaid.
Yes.
Yeah. So again, Disney and Meghan have this close relationship. Now, possibly this is all just a bit of a coincidence, but when you're sort of seeing more than one alleged slur against the Princess of Wales, with sort of Meghan's big backers in Hollywood, you do begin to wonder.
This is a quotation from one of the characters they're breaking into an office, and the analogy they make towards the Princess of Wales is just crude, really crude.
And based on absolutely nothing. Meanwhile, an absolute highlight of the sort of social calendar of the year, Chelsea Flower Show.
Oh, I know, I'm going tomorrow. I'm so
today.
excited.
And traditionally, we would see Her Majesty the Queen on the Monday, wouldn't we?
We would.
It was a big event, favourite of hers. Will we see the King and Queen today, do you think?
Yes, we're going to see the King and Queen, I think, with Prince and Princess Michael of Kent. I think the Gloucesters are going to be there. So it's a bit of a family outing. And, you know, Charles and Camilla, it's not something they've always done. They enjoy it. We know how much the King loves his gardens. But I think we will see them, we will certainly see them on today. We might see them later on in the week. I think we might see other members of the royal family there later this week. But this was always such an event synonymous with the Queen. And, of course, the last time Her late Majesty was there was in the mobility scooter because she couldn't get around. But
was that last year?
I'm not sure if it was last year. I've lost time.
I think it was, you know.
I think it might have been. It might be. It was certainly her last appearance at the Flower Show. And, of course, they got her round in this special mobility scooter because she was determined not to miss it. And I think it's lovely that we're seeing these big royal events continued by the King and Queen. I think we'll see it at Ascot next month as well, because it's important, where you are used to seeing royals at these events that sort of punctuate our calendar, that they're continuing that tradition.
I think the King will enjoy Chelsea Flower Show. I was reading there's lots of weeds going to be in the show gardens, and it's upset lots of gardeners because weeds are all the rage because they're good for bees and pollinators.
Which, of course,
and they're also native, aren't they? Rather than having all these foreign flowers, we should be allowing our own humble buttercups to thrive.
Let them grow.
So anyway, he'll be right at home.
And also there's a tribute, there's a memorial garden to Her Majesty the Queen, which also reflects the King's coronation, so they'll go and see that. And I think there's a floral tribute of some sort to the Queen's horse, Emma, the fell pony that we all saw at the funeral. There's lots of echoes of the Queen in it, so I think it'll be really, really lovely.
Is Emma still alive?
She is.
I wonder who rides her. Did you talk about Prince Andrew there?
No.
Well, he does a lot of riding around Windsor and the estate, and it seems to be how he fills his days. I'm not criticising him for that. I don't know how else he's supposed to fill his days. But this whole row about him being thrown out of his home Royal Lodge in the grounds of Windsor, what point does that really serve? What message is that sending out? I mean, Charles could make that go away. No one would ever know if Andrew's living there or not, or what Charles is paying for him.
I don't know, Eamonn. I think there's a bit of a spotlight on Andrew, and I think people would be aware if he was still in this big property. There's a big shake-up of royal palaces and royal properties at the moment. There has to be, because the issue of the King's wealth, we know, has been very controversial. The fact that Kensington Palace is standing empty and you've got a prince campaigning on homelessness. These are real issues. And people, not just Republic, but ordinary people will say, well, hang on, is this right? So I think he does need to look at, does Andrew need a place that big? Could he be sort of in a slightly smaller grace and favour place where there's perhaps less of a spotlight? I think these are the things the King is thinking about.
And what is the plan? What would they then do with Royal Lodge? I know you're talking about Kensington Palace there, but the reason a lot of Kensington Palace is empty is they've thrown junior royals out. How do you then utilise somewhere like Kensington Palace or Royal Lodge?
Well, it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, Kensington Palace, the apartment has been done up for the Prince and Princess of Wales, who have moved to Windsor, to, it has to be said, a much smaller cottage, so small the nanny can't live in. It's only got 4 bedrooms. But this 21-bedroom apartment is standing empty. Now, some of Kensington Palace used to be used for the Prince of Wales's drawing school. I mean, you can make use of palaces in different ways. I think probably the most obvious thing that Charles is going to do is open up more of Buckingham Palace to the public. So that's not just standing empty. But I do think this issue of sort of of palaces and who's living there and how much it's costing the taxpayer is an issue that Charles is acutely aware of.
Airbnb, that's the
Just
answer.
on that,
Airbnb.
it strikes me that Buckingham Palace is empty most of the time.
It is.
He's staying in Clarence House, isn't he?
Well, it is. It's empty because it's going through a massive refurbishment.
Right, OK, so will he move then?
Well, that's the big question. I mean, he loves Clarence House. And I don't think he will move out of that. I think he'll use Buckingham Palace as an office. But of course, it is the HQ of monarchy. So it makes sense to open it up. It's very successful in the summer when the staterooms are open. The gardens are open now. Why not open a bit more of it up? Make it into a museum. I promise you it'll be absolutely packed.
Thank you, Katie. Lovely hearing from you. Thank you very much indeed. Royal Editor at Vanity Fair. Thank you very much. Time approaching 8:15.
Let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's top stories. The Labour leader will pledge to cut suicide rates within 5 years if his party wins at the next general election. Speaking later today, Sir Keir Starmer will describe it as the biggest killer of young lives in the country. He'll also outline plans to modernise the NHS and to meet waiting list targets.
A protest will be held today in opposition to the government's plans to ban some workers from striking. Union leaders will say the minimum service levels bill will prevent workers from legally voting to take industrial action. This new legislation returns to the House of Commons later today.
A former Gurkha soldier has become the first double above-knee amputee to reach the top of Mount Everest.
Gosh.
The 43-year-old Army veteran reached the summit on Friday, having arrived on April the 17th, exactly 13 years since losing his legs whilst in Afghanistan in 2010.
Well, look, we've got a bit of sports news coming your way next. Manchester City back at the top of the Premier League and staying there. They are the new champions. They now have their sights set on a treble. Will they get there? Aidan McGee with the latest next.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's 8:19. Still to come on today's programme.
From JLS to JCB, meet the pop star JB Gill as he tells you about going from boy band member to award-winning farmer, and he has time to write books as well. Speaking to him shortly.
9:20, the columnist and parliamentary sketch writer Madeline Grant will be here with her take on the morning's top stories, including Suella Braverman's speeding row.
You know, I would say about the speeding row, most people are saying basically that's up to her. Would you not have done the same if you were in that position? She paid the money, she paid the fine, she took the points. She just did not want the embarrassment of being publicly seen doing the correction course. That was it. So that tends to be what I'm reflecting there from people on that situation. Speeding Suella, let us know what you have to say. gbviews@gbnews.com. Pages are making me decidedly blue this morning. Treble yell as Man City set their sights on a treble after lifting the Premier League trophy yesterday. Manchester United out to stop them doing that. The Mail also focuses on Man City's coronation, which was made mathematically certain after Arsenal's 1-0 loss to Forest on Saturday. And 3 Peps to heaven. This is the Mirror, as Guardiola hails his exceptional squad. Aidan McGee now to tell us what he thinks. I mean, they are exceptional. There's no doubt, is there?
No doubt whatsoever. I mean, I think we're talking now about the best collection of footballers on the planet right now at Manchester City. Oh, yeah, without doubt, without doubt. I think that, look, the elephant in the room is obviously the 115 charges. If any of those are proven and City are issued with a points deduction or a major fine, that does taint the achievement to some degree, in my view. That's just my opinion.
So the treble is very strongly on.
Without doubt. Well, you know, they've only got Man United to be in the FA Cup final, so that shouldn't be a problem, should it? But, that'll be a tough game, an extremely tough game, because I think Eric Ten Hag will go into that match saying to his players, you know, let's respect the history of Manchester United here. We can preserve our immortality just by winning this game. Having said that, I think this has been very kind to them in the actual Champions League final. The fact that they've got into, you would probably look at the semi-final and say, you know, Real Madrid was probably the final, but they just swatted them aside last week, didn't they? But I mean, just look at what they've done. I mean, they signed, last summer they signed Leeds United's best player. Calvin Phillips.
Times he played.
He started 1 match. That was yesterday. He's played 9 substitute appearances. That was England's top player.
Did they? That's why he was prancing around with a trophy.
They did, and they couldn't.
I feel sorry for that lad because he is such a good prospect.
He is, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it just shows the strength of Manchester City. You can put in a reserve team striker in place of Erling Haaland, and he's a World Cup winner. And he's the guy who scored the winning goal yesterday.
So
Alvarez.
that winning goal was against Chelsea?
Yeah, for their 4th 1-0 win against Chelsea in a row. They are pushing towards 100 goals as well. So they're sweeping the board across the place. But also, when the going got tough in January, when they lost at Tottenham, Arsenal looked as if they were moving ahead. They just rattled off 24 matches unbeaten. That's what the top sides do. That's what Manchester United used to do back in the day. Whenever the going got tough, they produced a run to help them overcome their rivals. And that's what's happened again this time. I don't think Arsenal bottled it. I think they're professional sportsmen who did their very best to win the league. But if you lose points at Liverpool, you lose points at West Ham, in an era when you have an absolute juggernaut chasing you down, breathing you down your neck, those loss of points are going to be decisive, and so it's proved now.
Looking at the other results yesterday, Brighton beat Southampton 3-1, but West Ham hammering Leeds 3-1 as well. Leeds have got to do what now to stay up?
Well, they have to win as a minimum next week. Sam Allardyce saying yesterday that they're going to be without players next week through injury. It's going to be very, very tough. He said that after the game, you can see his frustration coming through. He said there's no lack of effort or application from his players, but their decision making just isn't up to the mark, and that's ultimately what's going to cost them this season. They haven't been able to put a run together at any point of the season. They probably left a little bit too late to sack Jesse Marsh. They probably should have done it before the World Cup, but they had that win at Anfield.
Allardyce in earlier.
Without doubt, four matches is not enough to save this side. Look, I think they'll be strong in the Championship next season, and it's not all done yet. I mean, they could get a result next week. They're only playing Tottenham at home, so that shouldn't be a problem. But
could you see Sam being their manager in the Championship?
Yes, I could. Yeah, I could. I mean, I know Sam very well. I used to write his column for the News of the World. And I remember when he took the West Ham job in 2011 after they've got relegated. He said, "I've only taken it, Aidan, because they've got a good fan base, they've got a good history, and I think they're going to come back." Leeds very much fall into that category, don't they? Because they've been strong in the Premier League for 2 or 3 seasons now, and I think they have a good chance of coming back with the finance behind them and the support. And there was a busload of Leeds fans turned up. I think it was several busloads of about 100 fans turned up with Sam Allardyce masks on yesterday, and so they obviously like him and they think he can guide them back. But they need some resilience in that team. They don't seem to have it right now.
So on the bright side of life, Leeds could be looking at a good year next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, possibly. But they've got. I'm only saying that because it just looks very difficult. Leicester in action tonight against Newcastle. That's a very difficult fixture for them as well. They're right in trouble. But you know, again, when these sides have got no form, you're asking a lot for them to just pull something out of the hat. It's a very, very difficult thing to do.
Where do you want to go next?
There's some good golf yesterday. Brooks Koepka held off Scotty Scheffler, 2 shots his lead. Interesting because he's the first live golfer to win a major. He's now won 5 majors.
The USPGA.
Yeah, that's right, golf, one of the majors. He's won 5 majors now since Rory McIlroy last won his in 2014, his last one in 2014. I think it's a slight mental block for Rory McIlroy now. He's sort of heading back. But then we had the really interesting spectre of Michael Block, who is a US Southern California club pro. I mean, he earns $150 per lesson, handing out lessons in Southern California as a club pro. He got a hole in one yesterday and didn't finish too far off the top. So great story.
I was in Belfast last week, and it's just amazing the interest there is in Rory.
Yeah, I know.
People talk to me as if I know Rory, like, you know, of me and
I had a golf lesson from him once. I had a lesson off him. Yeah, I did. Yeah, he couldn't rescue my game.
He lives in America somewhere, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He lives in California, I believe, but he was from the Hollywood area of Belfast.
I know all that. Yeah, but he's. But, you know, there is a lot of interest. You know, sometimes people haven't got much interest outside sports like soccer, whatever. But
he's still young. He's still young. I mean, mental blocks can be overcome in sport. I still believe he's the best player on the planet in terms of talent.
When what's missing?
Look, there's been more challenges in the last 8 or 9 years. Brooks Koepka wasn't on the scene 7 or 8 years ago. Neither was Scotty Scheffler. People like Patrick Reed, who've won majors since then. But I don't know. It's just that in golf they call it the yips, don't they?
I always think with Rory, he's slightly too human, he's slightly too real. So therefore, a lot of sports people I've known at the top of their careers, they have been robots. They've been absolute robots. And I think Rory might be just slightly too human.
Do you think he's a bit more ruthless?
I think that could be a way of putting it. But what do I know? Tennis, Andy Murray.
Yeah, he's out of the French Open. Not a huge surprise. I mean, he's had some poor results recently on clay. He was never really a clay expert. I mean, he's only played the French Open once since 2017. But he was a decent a clay court player back in his day. But obviously, Rafa Nadal and Novak Djokovic, even Federer to a lesser degree, he won it back in 2009, have kind of blocked his way there. But look, he's got a solid 7-8 weeks now until July the 3rd when Wimbledon starts to get himself fit for that. I mean, you have to admire his determination to try and get back to the top. He's shown flashes of being able to get back there, but it's a big ask for him to kind of try and reproduce that form. But something's keeping him going. It can't be money. It must just be professional desire, I would imagine.
Incredible. Let's talk about La Liga. The championship that once belonged to Ronaldinho, Ronaldo, Cristiano and Messi today belongs to racists. Who wrote that?
That was written on Instagram last night by Vinicius Junior. We all know about his quality as a player. Brazil international, scored a great goal in that first leg against Manchester City a fortnight ago. Probably going to be one of the best players in the world in the next 3 or 4 years, I would have thought. Now, he was playing action at Valencia yesterday for Real Madrid. He alerted the referee to some severe racial abuse coming from the crowd. The referee did nothing. Carlo Ancelotti said afterwards, "I thought about taking him off the pitch." He said, "I've never taken a player off the pitch for this reason before, but I regret not doing that." And he really laid into the referee and the officials as well. And then he got sent off later in the game to compound his misery. Now, he made that statement yesterday afterwards saying, "This is not an environment that I feel comfortable in anymore." I don't think this is necessarily his indication to his future as to whether he leaves, but it was a very unedifying moment. And I think for those people who think there's a serious problem with racism in this country, they need to look around Europe first of all, because it's huge over there. And the worst thing about this is that the Valencia chairman came out afterwards and criticised Ancelotti for going in so hard on his crowd, and that tells you that the way the wind's blowing there at the moment, they'll probably end up with a £3,000 fine.
Yeah, dear. Aidan, thanks for that.
Good to see you both.
Thank you very much, Aidan McGee there.
I was just sorry, my phone's just blowing up. The Daily Mail leading on your comments about Phillips Schofield. I was just getting up to speed on those.
You know, sometimes they all write Eamonn Holmes in sly dig. There's nothing sly.
I'll show you the headline now. I've done a screenshot. There we go.
Where's the headline? Sorry, I can't see.
Phil didn't decide to step down. He was sacked.
Yeah.
Says Eamonn Holmes.
Well,
it's all kicking off.
Well, OK, there we go. That's just my view. Coming up to 8:30, stay with us. Britain is expected to experience hot weather.
Excited.
How hot are we going, Isabel?
24 degrees, guys, and it's about time. More details from Dawn Neeson, Fraser Myers with their sunglasses in just a sec.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We will bring you the front pages now at this time of the morning. 8:33 is the time. Telegraph, first of all.
It's drawing attention to allies of Suella Braverman, fearing she's the victim of a smear campaign amid this weekend's speeding fine row.
Times reports some patients being encouraged to use the NHS app to book private healthcare in an attempt to cut waiting lists.
The Mail reveals that drug driving's become more prevalent than drink driving, according to a shock new police report.
And finally, the Star, Big Britain, as temperatures across the country could reach 24 degrees.
Can we just discuss that picture really quickly?
Yeah.
Why do they wheel out?
Me and my brother.
OK.
What?
I'll stop what I was going to say then.
What were you going to say?
I don't know, just why do the shirts all come off when the bods, you know, they're balancing their pints on their guts, and one's pasty white and the other one's lobster bread. It could be. I mean, that probably will be the scene in Bournemouth at 3 p.m.
Well, because British men don't know how to handle the heat, do they? I mean, it's
or to dress in the heat.
Exactly. It's like, you know, they wear sort of like, you know, weird things and socks and sandals.
It started with my son, 7 years old, was on a play date the other day, got hot, just took his shirt off. I was like, what are you doing? Put your T-shirt back on.
Well, why,
you lout.
You thought that was a loutish thing to do?
Yeah.
You see, I would have taken my shirt off in the past, but my moobs now prevent me from doing so.
Oh, come on, give us a flash. Give us a demonstration.
You'd fit right in.
I would get whiplash if I started spinning.
Well,
it's true.
It's when you can balance them on your knees, you know you're in trouble, love.
Oh, I know.
Right, Fraser, let's raise the tone. Students are defending free speech at Oxford University. About time too. This is the front of the Telegraph.
Yeah, so this is the story of Kathleen Stock. People may know her. She's a gender-critical feminist and philosopher. She was hounded out of her own university, Sussex University, for her kind of what are seen as controversial comments about the trans issue. She doesn't believe that trans women are women and that people can actually change sex. And it's interesting because she's incredibly thoughtful, incredibly considered, and yet she has become this unbelievable hate figure among students. You know, the Oxford Union has a proud 200-year history of defending free speech. They've invited Holocaust deniers like David Irving. They've had Nick Griffin from the BNP was invited. All the O.J. Simpson, even just after he finished his trial, was invited. So in the past, and in the fairly recent past, there was an understanding that students could handle difficult ideas, controversial people, and there were protests, sure. But the protests against Kathleen Stock had taken up an entirely new level. Essentially, the Students' Union, which is separate from the Oxford Union Debating Society, tried to ban the Oxford Union from the Freshers' Fair, which would have basically cut off its funding, you know, because the Freshers' Fair is where you meet new students, get new subs, get new recruits. So, essentially, just because they've invited a feminist to speak, there could have been the chance to destroy this entire, traditional debating society. Luckily, students are fighting back. The university is fighting back, saying, no, actually, we believe in free speech. So it's good to see people standing up to this.
Yeah.
Now, talking about standing up...
that is a very good link.
It's a very, very good link, because I'm trying to work this out. OK, Dawn Neesom's got a story in the Times. It's front page in the Times. Where is the Times, Isabel?
Oh, you've probably got it in your messy pile over there.
Pile, no.
I've got one here. You can share mine if you like.
I can actually see it.
Can you? Right.
Allow me.
So what is it? German men take a stand for sitting to spend a penny.
Right, OK. Well, 7 years ago, two writers published, it was meant to be a bit of fun, a whimsical guide to Germany's sometimes perplexing social conventions, and they called it German Men Sit Down to Pee. OK, it was whimsical, I think it's right. But in any case, now there has been an official survey done, an international survey, about how men go to the toilet. And it is actually factual that German men are more likely to sit down whilst having a wee. 62% of German men sit down. I'm lowering the tone here, aren't I? But, you know, you can remind me.
I think that's fascinating.
It is fascinating. So 62% of German, that's the highest nationality that sit down to pee, followed by 50% of Swedes, 34% of Italians. And where do you think the Brits come in next?
Oh, tiny proportion, I reckon. 5%?
No, it's actually 23%.
Oh, right.
So
one in five. One in five people.
Yeah.
Fraser, are you one of
Oh, no,
one
we
in five?
don't need to go there.
Just say what you did. We're going to discuss this.
It's a matter of where you are, isn't
Well, look,
it?
I would
It's a
say
disgusting
never
pub
in my
toilet,
life have I
no.
thought about sitting down to have a pee.
Really?
I've never thought, if I was only doing a pee, why would I
But
sit
how do
down?
you know? If you're...
You have to be the one firing the
You know, what, you know.
Are there not instances when you wish you were sitting?
I take your point that a lot of women would say, who's dribbled round here?
Oh, no. People are having their porridge right now.
It's also people are peeing on the toilet floor. My father was a carpet fitter, right? And I always remember as a young kid, he used to say to us, never get carpet in your loo. And I never thought what he's talking about, but I realise what he's talking about now.
Yeah.
Because of the smell and the stink.
It's
so
horrible.
basically, women would complain, why can't men hit the target? So if you sit down, you stand a better chance of hitting the target.
Yes.
I think 100% chance, I would hope.
And, otherwise, I'll be slightly worried. And the thing is, on a serious note, it is actually meant to be healthier for men to sit down whilst having
why is that?
a wee, because it helps the bladder empty itself.
How fascinating.
Yeah,
See, I
absolutely.
like this
Which
kind of-
obviously, you know, if you've got prostate
Well,
cancer
now
or
you
something
like it.
that.
And 2 seconds ago, you didn't like it.
You get graphic, but I'm interested that there's a medical benefit to
There is,
sitting
yeah. So
down,
it's studied
as
by a
well as
Dutch-
it being cleaner. So I think I'm going to be advocating for this in my house.
To sit down.
It sounds very civilised.
I mean,
So,
like this one, Eamonn, one of the best footballers in the world, actually sits down because he says it's more comfortable. Which footballer do you think that is?
No idea.
Lionel Messi.
Messi's not messy.
It's not Messi. Oh,
He's
very
not
good.
Messi.
You're good at this broadcasting, Marky, aren't you?
So he's not messy.
No, he's not Messi.
They even have a word for it, with it being German, because, you know, in German you can make these kind of compound words.
Sprinklerlatter.
It's a Sitzpinkler, a sitting
Put your
peer.
Sitzplinker away.
Yeah, and
oh gosh,
you can create words like out of express like whole sentences out of words. I mean, everyone knows Schadenfreude, you know, the joy at people's pain, but they've got amazing words like Kummerspeck, which literally means grief bacon, but it's the eating that you do when you feel sad.
Oh, wonderful.
Things like that.
What?
Kummerspeck.
Oh, I do that.
And there's another one called Backpfeifengesicht, which is a face in need of a punch, which, you know, is a wonderful insult.
Fraser, that's so good. I need you to write all of this.
I was going to say, can you write them down phonetically, please?
Schadenfreude is one of my favourite phrases.
So
I enjoyed
2/3
that.
of German men sit down to pee.
Yeah.
What do we say? 1/5 of British men sit down to pee.
23% of Brits.
And Isabel thinks that this should be the new
I think
thing.
it's the new mandatory way of going
because
to
it's
loo.
because it's more
Well, it's
hygienic.
better for your health as well.
Yes.
It's a win-win.
But where do you stand on missing the target?
I have zero tolerance. And
Right,
don't
so-
leave the seat down. There's nothing
So
more
I never
annoying.
get that seat down, but I swear to God, and I'm not being funny here. What is the difference if the seat is up or down?
Well, because if you miss, then you don't miss onto the seat, one presumes.
So you pee with the seat up.
Yeah, and then you put it back down.
Right, I never knew... I always knew there was a problem, but I didn't know what the problem was. Right, okay.
Dawn, let's turn to the Mail. This is a story about a theatre which is saying only black people are allowed to attend.
Imagine that headline the other way round. Only white people are allowed to attend.
Racism's got worse.
It's just, I said to Fraser in the break, it's just like the world goes mad on a daily basis now, doesn't it? It's actually my local theatre. It's the Theatre Royal in Stratford in East London, and they have a play coming out called Tambo and Bones, which is examining 300 years of African-American history. Sounds actually very interesting. Could all learn a bit from going there. But they are hosting a one-off blackout night to create a safe, private space for an all-black identifying audience.
But what if you're mixed race and you have one parent who's white and one parent who's black?
How black do you have to be?
Like, what if you're married
But could I identify being black? Could I turn up and say that I'm Eamonn?
It doesn't make any sense at all.
Aren't we supposed to be judged by the character of our personality? And,
absolutely, rather than the colour of our skin.
Rather than the colour of our skin.
And, you know, GB News' brilliant Nana Akua has written a personal piece on this, Nana, who happens to be black, saying that, you know, this is basically segregation. It's like apartheid again, isn't it? Now, the theatre, in their defence, are saying, look, you know, no one will be banned. I mean, it's not if you are white and you turn up, but they are insisting it will be more of a safe space. I mean, it's like if I went to this theatre to watch this play with Nana, how much of a less safe space would it be because I'm not black?
Yeah.
I don't understand what they expect me to do.
But also, aren't we supposed to understand the experiences of the past and, you know, atone for our sins?
Educational,
Wouldn't it be helpful
learn
that we
from
learned
it. We've talked about slavery and imperialism so much recently. So surely this is a way to learn a lesson.
Yeah.
This kind of segregation is becoming a lot more common. It's really prevalent on US campuses in particular and in a lot of American schools where they will have black-only fraternities and black-only accommodation and things like that. And it's justified on the grounds that, you know, you need this safe space away from racism. But it's you know...
It's insane.
It is obscene. And you mentioned the Martin Luther King quote, judging people by the content of character. You know, a lot of kind of woke academics who practice kind of critical race theory, they say that's outdated, and actually you do need to start judging people by their skin colour again.
It's exactly why racism's worse now than it was.
And yeah, they say actually this whole Martin Luther King stuff is an excuse by white people to ignore the realities of racial oppression. So it's turning the whole thing on its head.
Sorry.
It's completely repudiating, you know, this idea of us all being equal, and it's scandalous. It presents itself as progressive. It presents itself as anti-racist when it's anything but.
Yeah, well, and that applies to the Oxford University stuff as well. It's all, you know, it presents itself as being protecting free speech and the rights of trans people, but actually at the cost of everybody else. Dawn, should we cheer ourselves up with this heat wave, this promised heat wave? I'm reptilian. I just live for the sun.
Me too. I'm with you on this one. I think it's more of a girl thing, actually. Yeah, this is the front page of the Daily Star, as already discussed too. Not the most attractive men on the cover. Bake Britain. Basically, we are going to be, for the next potentially 42 days, under a 1,000-mile heat dome.
I'm so happy.
I'm so living for this one.
This makes me so happy. There's a link between the temperature and my personal happiness.
Yeah, me too.
But would you
like a graph.
have time to avail of it? I mean, there's a link between my personal happiness and a blue sky, but that doesn't matter if it's cold or warm.
I walk everywhere where I live. So I walk to pick the kids up from school. If the sun's shining, I'll take them to the playground. I take them to all their clubs and activities. If that's pouring with rain and we're running and it's miserable and our feet get wet, but if it's sunny, I'm singing and I'm skipping.
It's going to hit 24 degrees, hotter than Morocco, and it could potentially last...
Hotter than Morocco?
Yeah. It could potentially last until July the 3rd. So, marvellous. Good news all round.
Phew! That's what I've got to say about that. What is the crowning farce in The Guardian, Fraser? How the Met held 14 at a protest seminar.
So people will have heard about various protesters being arrested before they could even, start their protest. There were Republicans arrested because they had these kind of cable tie things that they were just using to carry their placards. There was an actual monarchist was arrested, wanted to attend the celebrations, but she was mistaken for a protester. And now it turns out that the police have raided a seminar quite a long way away from the coronation in Haggerston. So if people know London, that's miles and miles away from Westminster. There was a seminar completely unrelated to the coronation on how to protest peacefully, and it was raided. And by about 10:30 a.m., all these people were bundled into a police van and spent the day in custody.
Yeah, it goes along with the women's...
along with the women...
what were they called? The Night Angels or something with the rape
alarms,
who genuinely were there because there were lots of women travelling alone in the middle of the night, including my 60-year-old mother-in-law who caught a night bus to go and see the Queen. You know, you want to look out for women in those circumstances. And there they were in a Westminster City Council approved organisation with the Metropolitan Police in partnership, all arrested and locked up for 24 hours.
It's madness, isn't it? And it's like, you know, if you actually want to report a crime, an actual crime that's happening, no one turns up.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Anyway, don't know what else to say to that. It's just too much, isn't it?
There was an event took place the weekend. This walk.
The night walk, breast cancer. Yes.
Which many years ago I started it. Started like as in start. You can walk now, whatever. Sound a horn, start the gun or whatever. And that is the antithesis of what you were talking about there, about women feeling unprotected and whatever, because everybody is together and they feel I think, so safe. The fact there's thousands and thousands of people, and they're walking in the dead of night.
But I'm sure there were provisions for that, where they were giving out, you know, for women arriving and things. I'm sure there were charities making sure that people felt safe. Imagine if they scooped them all up and chucked them in jail.
No, but I'm just saying, I think it gives a very safe environment. It's a very joyous environment, whatever it is.
Well, because women are quite good things, and we're together, and we have strength in numbers, etc., etc. So why the hell are we being cancelled?
I went out to a restaurant on, what night was it? Was it Wednesday night? It was Wednesday night in Belfast. And there were 37 people in the restaurant, right? And 35 of them were women.
Oh, your dream.
Excellent.
No, but my point was this. I then sat round and no one seemed to bite on this one as I was talking about this. And I was saying, somebody explain to me why it's like a monopoly on women now going out, and they enjoy...
Yeah, my dad says the same.
4 women sitting together, and they're wearing slightly glitzy, nice stuff and whatever.
Boozing.
And they're having a nice time. They're laughing and giggling. And I just think you wouldn't get a restaurant of 35 men.
You might get a curry house.
Or a pub.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But it is such a thing that men are either so boring that women don't want to be with them, or they find their own company, they find other female company.
I do think women enjoy female company.
Yes.
There's nothing I look forward to more than being out with a bunch of my best girls and having a couple of drinks.
But then again, I enjoy Melcombe, and I went to football yesterday with a load of blokes, and it was great fun. I mean, you know, there were women there as well, obviously, but I mean, you know, we all can get on with one another, surely.
You're like me, we're both bi. You know, we can sort of have it either way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
we'll both go either way, won't we?
Either way.
Yeah.
Well, on that note,
but I did
Big revelation.
I did enjoy walking around the restaurant, going to all the different tables. 35 women, just pleasing them all.
I'm sure you did.
Hello,
I'm George Clooney.
Yes.
Eamonn, what are you doing there? What are you doing here?
Oh, but I bet they loved having you there. I bet it really was sort of like, let's go and stroke an Eamonn night.
Stop it. Anyway, thank you guys. Been very enjoyable talking to you today. Dawn and Fraser there. 1/5 now. Actually, while I was in Belfast, there was this massive big poster up for JLS, reformed, regrouped, on tour again. And so they're coming to Belfast as well. And they were responsible for 5 UK #1 singles. But when this guy's not performing to those crowds, J.B. Gill is strapping on as well as he's tending to his animals. He has a great... Look how happy he is. It's an amazing farm you have, JB. It really is. And you don't just stop there. We're going to talk about your children's book as well, Ace and the Animal Heroes. So much to pack in, so much to talk about, my friend. Good morning.
Always. It's because I haven't seen you for so long.
Yeah. And you are going to Belfast, are you?
Yes, we are. I think it's the 21st of October. So we kick off in Dublin on the 20th of October, and then we'll be in Belfast. And yeah, we always like to start off the tour at that side of the pond because it's always exciting. We don't get to travel as often as we like. So yeah, it's going to be good to be back in town.
But I know, like, I look at that Marvin, and he's up there, and like he's got nothing else to do, has he? You know, he can go and do his tour and all that sort of thing. But I look at you, mate, and I go, this whole other...
You've got your Tamworth piggy wigs.
Yeah, you just can't get up and leave. It'd be like leaving your kids, you know, leaving a farm like that. It must be difficult to work it all in for you.
It is difficult, to be honest. Obviously, when I'm overseas, then it's a little bit harder. But of course, my wife will always help and support. And we've got lots of people locally that will come in and will help out as well. But we do tend to try and route it so that when we're traveling, if we've got a day off the next day, or if we've got a performance which is a bit closer to home, then we kind of go home after the show. So I can always do bits and pieces in the morning and then obviously be back in the venue for the afternoon before the show that evening.
JB, are you like me in that I watch all the farming programmes? Sunday's a delight for me, where I sit down and I have an hour of Country File there just to see what's going on. But it is tough work. I used to be a farming reporter when I worked in Belfast, and I enjoyed it. I have huge respect for what you guys have to do. And I remember your journey. And did you try out cheese? Did you try making cheese at one stage as well? Do I remember? Did I get that wrong?
No, I didn't make cheese. No, I didn't make cheese. But you're right. I think one of the difficult things that often farmers face is, of course, they're great at whether it's the animal husbandry or whether it's the crop rotations, whether it's working with the land, whatever it is that they're doing as almost the primary farming business. They're really, really good at that. But actually being able to create or develop a product is often where the money comes from, you know. So as you say, if you can make an award-winning cheese, or if you can, produce whatever it is, whether it's meat or, sort of, I guess, ready meals, things like that. Of course, that's where the value is, because, you've done something to the process. And that's where, obviously the supermarkets and some of the end distributors will make their money. And that's often difficult because you're so consumed with, the day-to-day working of the farm, which in itself is hard. But then being able to, do something after that, you're literally working around the clock. And if you don't have the right people with the right knowledge to help you, the business side of it can become difficult.
Yeah, well, you've done that. You've got your award-winning turkeys and your free-range Tamworth pork. So in terms of products, you've absolutely nailed that. But you're not stopping there. You've got your CBeebies farm show that lots of parents and kids will be familiar with you from. And now, not content there, you're launching your first ever children's book, Ace and the Animal Heroes. Tell us about it. What's the story?
Yeah, so it's kind of Dr. Dolittle meets Dick King-Smith. A little boy Ace, who is used to living in a city, a bit like myself, moves to the countryside and lives with his grandparents. Has to work out how he can resurrect this farm, which has been run down and left to him in an inheritance, even. And he's got obviously lots of help from around the community. A brand new best friend that he meets along the way. Some magical wellies as well to keep the mystery and the magic alive. And for me, it's kind of a little bit steeped in my experience, my personal experience, moving from town to country and sort of navigating what that all entails. But also, as I say, lots of fun, lots of mystery. And for me, I want children from everywhere, whether they live in the town, whether they live in this country, to be able to identify with it and appreciate it and learn something as well.
Yeah. And tell me this. Have you ever learned to talk to your animals like Dr. Dolittle? Do you talk to your animals? Because I believe if we could just work out the formula between what they're saying to us and what we're trying to say to them.
So.
Yeah. Have you
this is the main premise of the book. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to write a story like this. Because I'm like you, I look even at my dog as an example, and I think to myself, what are you actually thinking when you tilt your head to the side? And you look at me with those eyes, And I think it's one of those things that, especially with children, they, often those barriers are I don't know how to explain it, but perhaps less existent, and they just have a way to communicate often without using words, and as I say, that was the main premise for the book, being able to bring that across so that people can kind of share in that magic.
Oh, you're really wonderful, JB Gill. We enjoy talking to you because you know what? That's perfectly explained. You put that so nicely. Don't really have anything to add to that.
Well, good luck with the farm, mate. Good luck with the tour. Good luck with the book.
You.
And you work hard for it all.
You do.
Lovely talking to you, JB. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
You too. Take care, guys.
Cheers, mate. Cheers.
Stay with us. We'll have more for you in just a moment on Suella Braverman and her speeding fine.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Prime Minister meets with his ethics chief as pressure mounts for an inquiry into the Home Secretary's conduct. Very good morning to you. It's 9 o'clock on Monday, the 22nd of May. This is Breakfast on GB News with Eamonn and Isabel. Here's what's leading the news this morning. Rishi Sunak will fly back to the UK today to decide the fate of Suella Braverman following allegations she asked civil servants for special treatment over a speeding fine. Union heads will lead a protest outside Westminster in opposition to a bill that would ban some workers from striking. The legislation returns to Parliament today, where it'll be scrutinised by MPs. The Labour leader will lay out his plan for modernising the NHS this morning with a pledge to look beyond just funding to fix the fundamentals. He'll also commit to meeting all major health service targets in his first term. And Prince William will pay tribute to the survivors of the Manchester Arena bombing 6 years on. He's speaking at the launch of a report into mental health failings in the wake of the event. And GB News now has a new home at gbnews.com. You can watch all your favourite shows there, and you can get in touch via Twitter or email gbviews@gbnews.com. So our top story this morning, the Prime Minister is to meet with his ethics advisor today as he flies back to the UK to decide the fate of the Home Secretary. Rishi Sunak is facing calls to investigate Suella Braverman over allegations that she asked civil servants to help her avoid getting speeding points on her licence. Well, when asked about the story in Japan yesterday, the Prime Minister refused to publicly back her, saying he hadn't spoken to her and he didn't know the full details. Well, we're joined now by the Telegraph columnist and parliamentary sketch writer Madeline Grant. Good to see you, Madeline. Look, this is really interesting because at the moment the defence feels pretty strong from the Home Secretary in the sense that she didn't actually do anything wrong. She simply asked a question. But the Labour leader out this morning, keen to sort of stick the knife in, and says she appears to have acted inappropriately. Is that fair?
I think that it is sort of fair because
I very much appreciate that there is a difference between asking civil servants to look into a course of action and actually asking them to initiate it. But I still think it does have that faint whiff of one rule for them, another rule for us, that has been so destructive of the government in the past. So I can understand why Keir Starmer is seeking to make political capital out of this. I mean, I think ultimately the fact that she did pay the fine, she took the points, suggests that it's not the biggest smoking gun ever. But equally, I think if the ethics advisor does find that there was some wrongdoing here, it will be quite hard for the Prime Minister not to kind of follow along with that.
I suppose it has to just be black or white. Either she's transgressed and broken the ministerial code or she hasn't. But a lot of people have been pointing out this morning, emailing in, saying they are treated differently. Ministers do get special dispensations, not above the law, but they're certainly, you know, they're often run through red traffic lights, whatever it might be, with a police convoy, whatever it is. They do get different preferential treatment, don't they?
Yeah, and in this example, you can understand the rationale. So, for instance, you could imagine that if someone recognised, say, they're on a Zoom call, they recognise the Home Secretary, you might get someone who starts kind of filming their screen, and before you know it, the whole thing is being sort of beamed out like Handforth Parish Council. So you can see why the Home Secretary might at least ask the question. The trouble is that it does follow along from quite a long line of examples of where there really has been one rule for us, another for them. And I think also the public, many people have paid a speeding fine in their life. It's something that people can kind of relate to, so they might take particular umbrage at that. I mean, it's just, I can see why.
Lots of people will say, you know, this is coincidental, the timing of all of this, just a few days after she made a speech which ruffled a few feathers at Number 10.
Yeah.
Do we therefore suspect perhaps that Number 10 allowed this to be leaked, or is it more likely to be dissatisfaction from within the so-called blob that she took aim at in Whitehall, the civil servants?
Well, I can't actually think that it would be in the government's interest to do this, because even though there is quite a lot of disagreement going on between Number 10 and the Home Secretary, who's increasingly going out there and speaking on her own terms rather than always towing the party line. This does, whatever happens, this makes the government look weak. So I don't really see it as in their interest. More likely, I think, is that this has come from the civil service, which in recent months has been leakier than a sieve. You know, I think that's probably the biggest story here, actually.
OK, I think that's probably true. Just lastly, you know, what do you reckon her chances are of surviving this if you were to give it a percentage?
Oh, I don't know. It's likely that she hasn't transgressed very far, but she may well have nevertheless fallen foul of the rules. So I think it's quite likely that, according to the rules, she has slightly she's slightly crossed the line, I suspect.
What does that mean for her future?
Well, I think that probably not good, because the Prime Minister made much of, you know, his commitment to professionalism, integrity and accountability. And it will just be very, very difficult to maintain. I think either way, it's a bad outcome for them, because if he has to dispense with Suella Braverman, it will look like he's lost control of the Home Office and will come under even more pressure about the net migration figures that are going to come out later this week.
Very interesting. We're going to have more from you, Madeline Grant, in just a few moments. But for now, we're going to turn our attention to Holly and Phil. Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary taking up the reins. They'll be the presenters today for ITV's This Morning. That is following the departure of Phillips Schofield over the weekend. He announced he was stepping down from presenting the talk show with immediate effect after more than 20 years on the sofa. Let's speak to our London reporter, who's outside Television Centre in West London for us this morning, where This Morning is filmed. I suppose you might spot some famous faces heading in there, perhaps auditioning for the role. Big opening there.
Yeah, exactly. There's lots of contenders. People are speculating who might step into the presenting role. Like you said today, Alison Hammond and Dermot O'Leary, who usually present of a Friday, are presenting. As we heard, Phillips announced on Saturday that he would no longer be presenting this morning, posting on Instagram a statement that he said the programme has become the story and he wants to do all he can to protect the show that he loves. Over the weekend, he was pictured with his mum in Cornwall, which is where he grew up. And there are reports that he is devastated over the decision, which apparently, reportedly, he learnt about just minutes after filming his show on Thursday. That's when he was apparently told that he would no longer be working on This Morning. Holly Willoughby, who's been presenting with him for 13 years, will be remaining on the show. She's taking a 2-week break before returning on the 5th of June. And like we were saying before, contenders to take over presenting roles are Rochelle and Marvin Humes, Ryland Clark, Josie Gibson or Gino DeCampo, or of course Dermot Leary and Alison Hammond. Presenters for the rest of the week are yet to be confirmed by ITV, but Philip Schofield, when he made the post on Instagram, he also added that he would be presenting the Soap Awards next month, and ITV have confirmed that he will be the new presenter of a primetime series that's due to start in the coming months.
Lisa Hartle, thank you very much.
Today is the 6-year anniversary of the Manchester Arena bombing. In 2017, 22 people killed, hundreds injured after a bomb was detonated at the end of an Ariana Grande concert.
Yes, the attack prompted the government to draft legislation known as the Protect Duty, a bill promising measures to safeguard against potential terrorist attacks in public places.
Here's Chris Phillips. Chris is former head of the National Counter-Terrorism Security Office.
Really, the most amazing thing actually is the depth and the breadth of investigation and inquiry that went into this attack in Manchester, and of course causing the deaths of all those 22 people. And that inquiry basically really showed up everything from the security to the policing to the event itself not working properly from a security basis. And this was at a time when there was a wave of terrorist attacks coming across Europe. So there were no excuses. And what I think the government intends to do is try to do something about that. Nothing has changed. The Protect Duty is only legislation that's going towards Parliament. Yeah, I mean, one of the big things is the amount of time it's taken to actually get this thing to law. And it wouldn't have got this far, let's face it, without the actions of some members of the public, effectively, including one of the mums of one of the murdered children. So what it will do is actually put some emphasis on the events, the people that are running the event, to take counter-terrorism seriously. I mean, we know that that terrorists want to attack crowds and crowded places, and what this act does is make those big, particularly the big sites, do much more to protect themselves, to have an evaluation of what they need to do and what the threat is, and actually put in place some measures that will protect people. It was atrocious, let's be quite honest. The way the emergency services acted, in fact, they weren't even there when they should have been there. So no one came out well out of the Manchester Arena attack, and everyone had lessons to learn. I think the key thing here is that the lessons should have been learned, whether or not there's a legislation in place or not. Police officers should have been doing their job. The fire and ambulance should have done a better job as well. So everyone needs to learn lessons, and this is all about making sure and putting the emphasis on the organisations that are supposed to be protecting us at these events to do something about it. And I think it sensibly does show a different level of scale to the smaller properties, so the pubs, as you mentioned, Eamonn, and also those bigger events with 800 people plus. There's a great deal more responsibility on those events.
Chris Phillips. And with the time at 9:10, let's bring you up to date with the rest of today's news stories. The Trade Secretary will travel to Qatar, Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in a bid to agree new trade deals this week. It's a 5-day trip. Kemi Badenoch says she wants to strengthen the UK's strong trade and investment relationships with the Gulf.
It's been 10 years today since the murder of the soldier Lee Rigby, and his son has raised £40,000 in a charity bid to honour his father. 12-year-old Jack has said the fundraiser would enable them to continue to help him and hundreds of other children just like him.
The average wedding guest is set to spend more than £1,000 this year, according to American Express. This is not the couple, this is the guests at a wedding, OK? So the whole couples' experiences and kitchen appliances are amongst the popular gifts the guests are planning to make this year. Many people don't want gifts. They want to contribute to their holiday fund or their honeymoon fund.
Why are you looking at me?
No, I'm just saying.
Right. No, that is what we did, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying
Still expensive,
that seems,
isn't it?
Because most people are living in sin and they don't need things.
Exactly.
No,
yeah, we already have 2 toasters and everything, yeah.
So it's quite strange to say you go out and buy a toaster for someone, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
I'd always thought that the accommodation, especially with all these foreign weddings now and all the hen dos, that's where it all really racks up. But you mentioned wedding and everything, just there's an automatic increase. But up 18% on this time last year.
Gosh.
It's an expensive business.
Well, still at 9:30, no inflation there.
Apart from in the figures.
Yes, To The Point is coming up with Andrew and Bev. Let's find out what you're doing.
Well, if only we're going to be talking about the Home Secretary, who, bad timing, or is it good timing for her? She's in the Commons this morning doing routine Home Office questions, so she's going to not get a chance to talk about anything other than should she or shouldn't she have asked her civil servants to help. And she shouldn't be forced out, in my view.
She shouldn't be what?
Forced out of her job.
Not for this.
No, I mean, look, I look at this and I think, if you're in that position, who wants to go in with the great unwashed and sit there and everybody saying, look who she is, and she's getting told off here at our, what's it called, point? I've never done one, so I don't know.
Why, again, are you looking at me?
Because you've done 2.
I've done 2.
Yeah, but we've got Nick Freeman, who is known as Mr. Loophole.
Yes.
The lawyer coming on, and I think he may say she's done absolutely nothing wrong.
But at the end of the day, since this seems to be the kind of MO of the PM, he just defers to his ethics advisor, right? It's in the hands of Laurie Magnus whether or not she goes. And he stood on the steps and he said we'll have the highest levels of integrity and professionalism. He has to stand by that. And I would suggest that if there is a clear-cut breach of the ministerial code, then it's toast.
But what did she do?
That might be completely wrong. That might be completely wrong, but if that's how he decides to manage his team, then that's how it could end up.
She paid her fine, she took the points. She said, do you think I could get a separate course? Well, is she not allowed to ask the question?
Of course she is.
We can't help. It's fascinating, but of course she's got enemies, remember, in the cabinet.
Well, there's lots of suspicion about the timing of this.
Look, it's a civil service blob. You know, they got Dominic Raab, the Justice Secretary, out for alleged bullying, and they've got her because this has been leaked clearly by the civil servants because it all happened when she was Attorney General, not even in the same department.
A lot of people in that government who've done many things worse than that and have still got their jobs.
There we go. What else have you got coming up?
Holly and Phil.
Holly and Phil.
Well, apparently we have to talk about Holly and Phil. Apparently they're on at the same time as us normally. Not today, though. Much better to watch our show. I'm sure you would agree, Eamonn.
I would agree. I would agree. He says GB News isn't worth considering because nobody watches it anyway, but I think that the tables may be returned there.
Yeah.
Their audience figures may be in steep and sharp decline. The whole thing... The press accept everything they're told. He said he stepped down. He didn't step down, he was sacked. Right? She says, the couch is going to feel so empty without him. Well, then why are you trying to get rid of him?
She'd scheme to get him out.
She wasn't saying that last week. So it's just like the falseness continues. Somebody begin to tell us the truth. Holly, why did you want to ditch him? You know, somebody tell us within ITV. The unanswered questions. Is there something going to come out, Holly, that you don't want to be associated with? Your best buddies, your best friends, you share a hot tub together, whatever. And so what's this all about? And him, he's not the best presenter in the world. Why does ITV feel so beholden to him to present everything?
Why have they
Do you know
given him
what
6
I've
months' money
realised?
too?
My favourite thing about this whole story is that Eamonn Holmes now gets to tell us exactly what he thinks.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I love that, Eamonn.
But you see, the thing I could never understand, I would genuinely sit and say, why does he have this power? What is it about him? There's nothing about him that is indispensable.
No.
So why does he have this control?
Yeah, as Katie Hine says in the Mail today, he had control and he enjoyed using it.
Yeah, he did.
Power.
He clearly wasn't very popular behind the scenes.
Yeah, so the question is, you just like to know the truth. That's all we're asking.
We've also got great people coming to talk about the big stories. Kevin Maguire, my old sparring partner, and Amanda Patel.
Oh, very
good. Plenty to say on everything.
Much better than this morning, absolutely. Bev and Andrew, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. 16 minutes past 9. More from Madeleine Grant on that strikes bill showdown and Labour's NHS rebrand. Keir Starmer says he'll sort everything out in his first term as Prime Minister. Next.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely
Right.
stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship,
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
and no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio, and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m. Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamonn and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So here we go. Keir Starmer says he will explain how every specific commitment on the NHS he makes will be paid for later today. He said his party would focus on a prevention model of healthcare.
Let's speak to the Telegraph's parliamentary sketch writer and columnist Madeline Grant about all of this. Look, it is quite refreshing not to be debating how much more money or lack thereof is going into the NHS and actually talking about, you know, the advertising around children's fast food and possibly a tax on salt and sugar. What do you think their position's likely to be, given the huge claims he's making? I'll meet all NHS targets in my first term as PM and I'll cut heart deaths by a quarter.
I think it's terribly overambitious to think that doing the preventative thing is going to yield all that much difference. I mean, over the last 10 years or so, there has been an astonishing amount ratcheting up of kind of nanny state policies, as some call them. You know, all kinds of, you know, bans on where you can display food and so forth. And it's had very little impact on obesity. I mean, it might be worth doing in its own right, but I'm not sure that you can confidently say that that preventative model is going to yield massive returns very quickly. Exactly, yeah, exactly.
Well, to credit him, basically he's agreeing with the nursing unions, the doctors' unions, the ambulance unions in saying it's not just about your pay settlement. We accept, you know, money's needed to satisfy what you want there. But all these unions are saying it's the whole infrastructure around us. Even if you pay us more, our workload won't decrease.
Yeah. I mean, fundamentally, I think the way that the NHS is set up and structured and organised is a complete basket case. I mean, isn't it insane that you have such an enormous organisation which is all kind of governed from the centre? And there's no other area of public life where anything is run like that, or at least run in a non-dysfunctional way. But of course, that conversation about how the NHS is structured and run, and possibly looking at other countries that manage to achieve much better results while spending similar amounts of money per capita, that conversation, I think, is still taboo. So in the meantime, we're left with tinkering.
Yeah, but going back to your point about tinkering, how it doesn't necessarily yield great results, I accept that argument when you're talking about, you know, removing some of the sort of most fatty products or whatever. But what about a tax on salt and sugar? Presumably that would yield funds which could then be put into the health service.
Well, we already have a tax on sugary drinks.
And that's worked. That has reduced consumption, hasn't it?
The thing is, consumption was already going down before they introduced the tax because people were already opting for Coke Zero and Diet Coke.
Yeah, but I would like to see where the money's going. It's like your car tax doesn't go to roads, you know. So the sugar tax, does it go to the health service? None of us know that.
There's no national insurance, it just goes into the main pot.
What about minimum pricing for alcohol like they do in Scotland? It's something that I know that Wes Streeting has talked about in the past. Do you think that they might go down that road?
Well, maybe they will, but I think that they're trying to essentially. Labour has lost touch with the working class at the last election. They basically showed that they're out of touch and they're now more of a middle class party. I think going for minimum alcohol pricing, which is a policy that overwhelmingly affects the drinks that poorer people drink, whilst not going after the kind that middle class drinkers have, the nice wines and so on. Would be a bad look for them. But perhaps they'll do it regardless, because they do seem to be pretty committed to the nanny state stuff.
You talk about drinks and we'll all talk about you had too much last night or you had a good time or whatever. I was coming into work this morning and it was 4:30 in the morning and a guy came across a zebra crossing and he had a can of something in his hand and he danced his way across. But he wasn't someone who had just been happy from the night before. He was a fully fledged alcoholic. You could tell in his face, his demeanour, everything. And I just felt the sadness for that man because he was happy at that time, but he was in another world. And, you know, whoever reaches to these people, who's going to sort that out?
I know. And the thing with minimum alcohol pricing is that I suspect someone like your gentleman there, we could raise the price and he would still buy it because
they'll find a way or somebody will buy it for him or whatever.
So it will hit people who probably do not have such a problem and will change their habits because they're not addicted. It will simply add to their daily expenses.
Well, there's another story in the papers today, and drink wasn't the problem when people were stopped in their cars. It was drugs.
Oh, drugs, yeah.
So you know, you can tax drink to a certain degree, but, you know, people who need their hit will find something else.
Yeah, you know, exactly.
To do it like that. The other thing they've got to look at, I think, with the health service is agency staff. I've spent far too many weeks in hospital over the past year, and it's just unbelievable how it breaks down when an agency person comes through the door and they have to be briefed about what's going on and whatever, and how committed they are or not. Now, I can understand how it lowers the wage bill, having agency staff, but definitely, and I'm not alone in talking about this, you just see the difference, how it's not joined up.
Yeah, but also it's expensive, agency staffing and locally.
But it's not expensive.
Well, it is to the end.
It's not.
As a nurse, you get paid disproportionately higher as an agency
you get paid,
nurse
but you're
or
not
a
paying holiday, national insurance, tax. There's lots of reasons.
But what I'm saying is lots
cheaper.
of nurses are leaving the profession because they're not getting paid, and then they're becoming bank or agency nurses because they personally get paid more, but then they don't get any of those benefits. Cost the NHS. Well, anyway, it's the locuming's hugely costly
it is,
for the NHS.
And it's actually one of those examples where if you don't stump up the money in the first place, you might have to pay more in the long run for having to kind of compensate for it with locum workers and agents.
As Sean O'Casey put it, we're in a state of chassis. And there we go. Thank you. It's been lovely talking to you. Thank you, Madeline.
Always a pleasure.
Thank you very much indeed. See, now she's so ladylike, she's intelligent, she's calm. I'm just saying, she doesn't get excitable, she doesn't get angry, she doesn't snide remarks.
She doesn't have to sit next to you for 3.5 hours. That's all I would say. She's had 3.5 minutes. No, don't shush me or you'll get whacked.
We should be like Holly and Phil.
Oh, fake laughing. Oh!
There we
More
go.
from us tomorrow. Up next, it's
From us.
Bev and Andrew with To The Point.
And
Being
look how
ladylike.
harmonious we are, of course, on this programme. Bev and Andrew, of course, we love each other, of course we do. We're talking about the Home Secretary, Joe. That's the real meat in this programme.
Yeah, it is. Well, apparently, I mean, Labour and Liberal Democrats are making a lot of this. Do you think Suella Braverman did anything wrong asking for a speed awareness course privately?
I'm not sure she did, but it's your view.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nana, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment. I came to GB News because it's the people's channel, and I want the audience to have their say.